Chapter 520. In fact, laziness was contagious. When Lan Xian began to complain that she was bored, Shishi turned her head and looked for a while. Then she also came to the side of the stage and whispered, "Papa, I also want to play with Chen Shiyin. I don't want to learn this." "You've only been learning for a few minutes and you're already impatient? No, go back and practice with Coach Chun." Lan Zhoukai felt a little embarrassed and said reproachfully. Lan Xian was more stubborn. She pouted her small mouth and said, "I don't want to learn." Chen Guoqiang was strict with his daughter, but he was embarrassed to keep a straight face with other children. Moreover, he had seen this kind of situation many times in the gym. Weren't all children like this? It was their nature to be active and impatient. Therefore, Chen Guoqiang walked over and gently patted Lan Xian's shoulder. He said, "Xian Shishi, you can practice with Uncle for another 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you can take a break. Then you can play with Shiyin, okay?" "I don't want to. I don't want to." Lan Xian was still angry with her father. Her little temper came up. Cici, on the other hand, was relatively calm. She tilted her little head and thought for a while. After weighing this condition, she hugged Lan Xian's arm with her 2 little fists and persuaded, "Xian, it's okay. It's only 5 minutes. It's so fast. We can play soon." In order to gesture for 5 minutes, Shishi also stretched out a small hand. However, the boxing gloves didn't have separate fingers. Only one thumb was separated from the gloves. However, the little girl didn't realize that she had made a wrong gesture. "Shiyin, you also have to practice with your 2 younger sisters," Chen Guoqiang said in a commanding tone. "Okay." Chen Shiyin was a little reluctant, but in the end, she said indifferently, "We're not younger sisters. Shishi is the younger sister. I'm older than Shishi and Chen Shiyin." Lan Xian immediately changed the topic. She seemed to have forgotten her earlier unhappiness and loudly defended her position as an older sister. "I'm older than Shishi. Shishi is my younger sister," Chen Shiyin also shouted. "But I'm older than you. I'm 5.5 years old." Lan Xian and Chen Shiyin's voices were louder than the other. "I want to be an older sister, too. My mom said that I'll be an older sister when I have younger siblings." Shishi didn't raise her voice, but she was still unconvinced. "I also have a younger brother and sister. My mother said that I will have them next month," Chen Shiyin said excitedly. Chen Shiyin's mother had gotten pregnant much earlier. Previously, she had said that she was going to have a younger brother or sister, so Shishi had been envious. "Really? Chen Shiyin, then when you have a younger brother or sister, can I go to your house to play with him?" Lan Xian said enviously. Looking at the 3 children chattering about various side buildings, and then happily practicing together, Yang Yi and Lan Zhoukai, who were sitting below, looked at each other and shook their heads, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Because of his renewed interest, Chen Guoqiang observed their expressions and taught them for more than 10 minutes. When he saw that the little guys were gradually becoming impatient, he let them rest. On the boxing ring next to them, Lan Zhoukai was already practicing with his personal trainer. He himself wanted to lose weight, so he had come to the gym several times. Therefore, he had already learned the posture and so on. At this moment, the personal trainer was holding a boxing target and calling out to him. Lan Zhoukai was also punching vigorously. Yang Yi also had his own personal trainer, but he had no intention of practicing. After all, holding back his strength and pretending to be a beginner slowly, punching one punch after another was really boring. He might as well stay and take care of the 2 little girls. After Shishi and the others came down from the boxing ring, they were attracted by Lan Zhoukai's movements. They all gathered around and watched with relish. Not knowing that this was just practice, Lan Xian even shouted excitedly, "Dad, you can do it! Dad, you can do it!" As if his daughter's cheers filled Lan Zhoukai's body with strength, Lan Zhoukai fought even harder. It had to be said that the strength of a fat person was not small. After wearing boxing gloves, Lan Zhoukai's punches, which were the size of a sandbag, whizzed over with a momentum that could swallow mountains and rivers. His personal trainer had no choice but to use a technique to deflect his punches with a punching target. So strong. Shishi heard the punching sounds of the boxing target, and couldn't help but open her little mouth in surprise. Unfortunately, his coolness didn't last for more than 3 seconds. Throwing punches like this exhausted a lot of stamina. Lan Hao Kai stopped after a while, panting heavily as he leaned against the railing. But he still had to act cool. He stretched out his left hand, and the fingerless boxing glove was just enough to give a thumbs up. Lan Hao Kai was just like that, panting and winking at his daughter. Lan Xian was also quite proud, and copied her father and gave him a thumbs up. Shishi ran up, raised her little head and said loudly, "Uncle Lan, you're super strong. I saw you hit that uncle. Did it hurt a lot?" "Haha, are you saying it hurt me or him?" Lan Hao Kai was amused by Shishi's words, and asked while panting. "That's right, that uncle was in pain. He was going to be sent flying." In order to explain what she meant, Shishi gestured with her hands and feet. "No, that uncle is strong. He's stronger than me. How could he be sent flying?" Lan Hao Kai waved his hand. The personal trainer beside them heard this and hooked his arm at Shishi, proudly showing off his biceps. "My daddy is the best. This part of his will become super big." Shishi also hooked her thin little arm and pointed at the little muscles that didn't have much meat. Yang Yi was opening the backpack he had brought over. When he heard his daughter's words, he shook his head with a smile and said, "Well, don't talk about it. Dad and the children have worked hard. Come and eat something." The fastest runner was Lan Xian. She was a little tired just now, but now she was full of energy, and her face was full of excitement. Yang Yi brought the children homemade canned yellow peaches, as well as sweet, glutinous, and pink mung bean cakes. It was a pity that Yang Yi didn't make the strawberry yogurt that Shishi liked the most, because it was difficult to carry. Otherwise, the children would love it so much that they couldn't put it down. Although there was no strawberry yogurt, the canned fruit and mung bean cakes were still popular with the children. Lan Xian ate a few pieces. If Lan Hao Kai hadn't stopped her, she might have eaten until she was full. After eating and drinking, they rested for a while, and then it was time to start practicing again. However, the children were not interested in continuing to practice boxing. Only Lan Hao Kai continued to sweat with the personal trainer. Seeing this, Yang Yi took a boxing target, put it on his hand and said to Shishi with a smile, "Shishi, didn't you say that you want to practice boxing like Chen Shuryan? Come on, punch your father's boxing target." Shishi was a little hesitant at first. She frowned and said worriedly, "But I'll hit Papa and then Papa will be in pain." "No, you can't hit Papa. Come on, it doesn't matter. Use your strength and raise your big fist," Yang Yi said. Shishi raised her gloved hand and looked at it, only to find that the fist was almost as big as her face. The little girl couldn't help but giggle. "Big fist, I'm a big fist." Yang Yi also laughed. "Come on, hit here." Shishi raised her big fist and hit it. Although it was a little off, Yang Yi caught it well and hit the boxing target. But he felt that Shishi's fist didn't have much strength. He didn't know if it was because her body was weak from laughing. "Use more strength. You've already hit it very well," Yang Yi said encouragingly. The little girl's interest was piqued, and she gradually became serious. She called out, "Hey, hey." She threw punches at her father's punching target, making banging sounds. "I want to do it too." Lan Xian was sitting lazily to digest the food, but when she saw her friends playing so happily, she couldn't sit still and ran over. "Wait, let me put on the boxing gloves for you first." Yang Yi put on the boxing gloves for Lan Xian, and then put on the boxing target for his right hand. He said, "Shishi hit the boxing target for my hand, and Xian hit this hand, okay?" The two little girls nodded obediently, but then they began to rain their big fists on Yang Yi's hand. Fortunately, Yang Yi reacted quickly. He blocked with both hands, and at the same time, he had to reduce the force to prevent the excessive shock from hurting the little girl's delicate wrists. Giggle. Lan Xian and Shishi became more and more happy as they fought. In the end, the two little girls looked at each other and laughed. Then they punched with all their might. It was unknown how many punches were missed, but Yang Yi hurriedly adjusted the position of the boxing target and caught them. "I want to do it too." Chen Shuryan was originally practicing with her father. At this moment, she heard the movement over here and shouted as she got down from the boxing ring. Yang Yi deliberately pretended to be very scared and hid, and shouted, "Another one? No, spare me. Don't hit my papa." She also defended her father, but she only shouted and didn't stop her little sisters. Yang Yi pretended to run away, and the three little girls chased after him happily. They didn't want to hit him, but it was fun to chase. In the end, the three little girls hung on to Yang Yi's body, looking at their friends and laughing softly. Their bell-like laughter echoed in the boxing stadium. Chapter 521. In a week's time, Yang Huan would be taking the art examination of Jiangqing Media University. This was a big matter for the Yang family. Not only was Dong Yuer concerned about it, but Yang Qing also called every day to ask about Yang Huan's situation on behalf of his mother. Yang Yi also cooked some soup for Yang Huan from time to time. "Brother, I drink chicken soup every day and sister Ding Xiang cooks for me every night. Look, my face is round now." Yang Huan sat in the booth and said coquettishly as she drank the soup. Yang Huan was actually under a lot of pressure these days. After all, she couldn't get into Jiangqing Media University with her academic results. Yang Yi had high hopes for her. Moreover, after living in the city for half a year, Yang Huan had a clear understanding that it wasn't easy to be a farm girl. The best way out was the one her brother had pointed out to her. Therefore, when Yang Huan was preparing for the art examination, she wasn't as insignificant as before. She was also worried about the risk of failing the examination. However, Yang Huan didn't like to show her negative emotions. Therefore, she still acted coquettishly. "Come on, you don't know how lucky you are. Ding Xiang buys groceries and cooks for you every day. Why are you complaining about this and that?" Yang Yi scolded. Ding Xiang came over and poured coffee for Yang Yi. "I'm not complaining about Sister Ding Xiang. I love Sister Ding Xiang the most." Yang Huan hugged Ding Xiang's arm and said with a smile, "Sister Ding Xiang, don't you agree?" Ding Xiang rubbed Yang Huan's head affectionately and said, "I didn't do anything. I'm receiving Brother Yang's salary and living in such a big house for free. I'll feel bad if I don't do something for you." "It's okay. After the examination, I'll cook for Sister Ding Xiang." Yang Huan patted her chest and said. Yang Huan's culinary skills were pretty good. She had learned cooking from Dong Yue since she was young. Previously, she had cooked for Shishi and received her praise. "Focus on your exams and try to get into Jiangchuan. Don't let your family worry about you." Ding Xiang smiled and slapped Yang Huan's hand away. She continued to make coffee at the counter. "If you're as smart as Ding Xiang, I'll be relieved. She gets first place in every exam, but she still has to take care of other work. You, on the other hand, focus on preparing for the art exam. We still have to worry about you." Yang Yi couldn't help but sigh when he compared Yang Huan and Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang was indeed amazing. Even though she had to work at the coffee shop, her academic results did not fall behind at all. Last semester, she was the first in total score. Unfortunately, there were too few bonus points and her national scholarship was snatched away. Even so, she still received the first-class scholarship. "You can't compare yourself to others," Yang Huan said gloomily. "Xiao Gua and Sister Ding Xiang are two straight-A students. They only need to read the book once to remember it. I can't remember it no matter how hard I read it." Before they left, Yang Yi handed Tyrannical Wolf's car key to Ding Xiang. He had already told Ding Xiang that the car was for her to use. She could use it to buy groceries and coffee beans. The reason was that the car was rarely seen. It was too obvious, attracting a bunch of reporters to Yang Yi and Murphy. "Just treat it as lending it to you. When Huan Huan learns how to drive after her exams, both of you can drive it." Ding Xiang could accept this explanation. Ding Xiang took the key and said awkwardly, "Brother Yang, but I haven't learned how to drive yet." Ding Xiang only had to pass the road test. The theory test was too easy, so there was no need to mention it. "You haven't learned how to drive yet, so all the more you have to practice. I've already told Guozi to drive you to the open space behind the mountain to practice when he's free." Yang Yi smiled and said, "You'll naturally know how to drive once you're familiar with it." Speaking of Guozi, Ding Xiang's face showed a trace of awkwardness. It wasn't a big deal. It was just that on Ding Xiang's birthday, Guozi had given her the crystal hairpin. After Yang Huan asked about it, she kept teasing the two of them, and even wanted to matchmake them. This made Ding Xiang and Guizi feel awkward. Ding Xiang and Guizi didn't have any intention of dating. Guizi was young and ignorant. He had suffered a few setbacks in his relationship. After that, he decided to work hard and achieve his dreams before thinking about relationships. As for Ding Xiang, needless to say, she was a child from a poor family. She wanted to work hard. So how could she have the heart to date? Ding Xiang was even a little afraid of love. After going to university, what she had seen and heard, as well as the experiences of her friends, made her understand that love in the big city was not as simple as the love of her parents in the Miao village. People separated and treated love as a game. She couldn't understand it, and didn't have the energy to think about it. She simply didn't want to think about it. Ding Xiang wasn't as carefree as Yang Huan. It was easy for her to integrate into the big city. She still had a thick layer of defense in her heart. It was just that she didn't realize it. Brother Yang, if you give me the car, how will you go back later? Ding Xiang asked, a little puzzled. I'll go back and take a taxi. My family has already bought a car. You don't have to worry about me. Yang Yi smiled and waved his hand. Yang Yi wasn't joking with Ding Xiang. The garage of his villa was now full of cars. There were 2 ordinary cars and 2 SUVs, each worth a few 100,000 yuan. There were also 2 slightly larger nanny vans of different colors. In addition, there was also a Humvee SUV that Yang Yi liked. The Humvee SUV wasn't a pickup truck like Tyrant. It was a little like the Hummer in Yang Yi's previous life. It had a reinforced appearance and looked like a tank. It gave people a fierce feeling. However, even though there were so many cars, the total cost of the 7 cars didn't exceed 5 million yuan. It wasn't even comparable to the price of a sports car from Lance Haokai, who helped Yang Yi buy these cars. This time, Yang Yi didn't have to go to the 4S store to buy a car. Lance Haokai had connections to help Yang Yi settle it. A few thick books of drawings were placed in front of Yang Yi. He only needed to draw and choose the car he wanted to buy. The next day, the people from the regional distributor drove the top car to his door. However, Lance Haokai had a lot of opinions about Yang Yi's choice. I don't have any opinions about you buying a car that can hide your identity. But why don't you buy a sports car? You are a billionaire. Driving a Humvee that costs 1 or 2 million yuan, isn't it degrading? Lance Haokai was right. Not to mention the Backwave Technology Company. Yang Yi's stock in Sahara Online Mall was worth a few 100 million yuan. Not to mention, he had 20 to 30 million yuan in income from novels and music copyrights every month. Yang Yi was indeed a billionaire. Our family advocates frugality. Murphy also doesn't like luxury cars. So we decided to buy a practical car. Yang Yi explained to Lance Haokai. It was true that the Yang family advocated frugality. He and Murphy really didn't want Shishi to develop a princess syndrome. Usually, Shishi had to finish the food in her bowl before she could play. It was also true that Murphy didn't like luxury cars. Murphy pursued quality in life, not luxury. The only thing she pursued was music. Currently, Yang Yi was building a recording studio for her in the villa. Not only was all the equipment top-notch in the industry, but it was also fully equipped with other instruments. Even if she didn't use it to record songs, it was still a top-notch musical enjoyment to listen to songs. However, Murphy didn't do unto others what she didn't want. She didn't object to Yang Yi buying a luxury car. She even said to Yang Yi, "If you want to buy it, then buy it. Don't you have to spend the money you earned?" However, Yang Yi still didn't buy it. It wasn't that he didn't like it. Yang Yi liked top-notch sports cars very much. In the past, he even bought a sports car from a rich man in the Middle East. It was just that Yang Yi needed to save money. A year ago, he promised Shishi a super amusement park. Although Shishi had forgotten, Yang Yi had always kept it in mind. Building a Disney-level amusement park cost too much. At present, Yang Yi's net worth was only a fraction of this amount. So he couldn't spend money recklessly. He couldn't be greedy for enjoyment. He had to continue working hard to earn more money. Chapter 522. In this competitive entertainment industry, if a singer didn't appear in front of everyone often, no matter how good a singer was, he or she would gradually be forgotten. Singers like Murphy, who had a lot of classic songs, were better off. It was more difficult for idol singers who relied on their faces and figures to make a living. After all, behind them, there were countless newcomers waiting to rise up. As long as they did not work hard, they would be replaced. But other people would not be able to achieve Mo Fei's current achievements and status. Even if they tried their best to catch up with their work, they still had to worry that they would be beaten to death by the new generation. Anyone would be envious of the treatment that Mo Fei enjoyed. This was also why, after Murphy disappeared from the camera and stage for more than a month, and did not participate in any jobs or programs, there were already people on variety shows who sourly predicted that Murphy's popularity would plummet after her pregnancy. There were also media people who, while repeating the same old tune about Murphy's pregnancy, teased Tianmay. Tianmay is probably the unluckiest agency in the industry, right? After their artists reached the top twice and became the new song of the Chinese music industry, they immediately went into a state of retirement because of pregnancy. Tianmay is really suffering a huge loss. Of course, in the end, he still praised Tianmay for their tolerance. After all, artists were also human. They also needed to rest when they were pregnant. Tianmay did not only care about their own interests and did not inhumanely squeeze their artists. Such a performance was praised by the media as industry conscience. Of course, it was not known whether Neo Miling should cry or laugh when she saw this industry conscience. She probably also had her own difficulties that she could not voice out, right? In fact, the popularity of the media tracking Murphy's daily life had decreased a lot. Yang Yi could see the clues from the decrease in the number of paparazzi and reporters around the coffee shop recently. However, the appearance of a news article made Murphy and Yang Yi once again enter the mainstream media's vision. The China Music Golden Dove Awards, jointly organized by the Copyright Association, the Music Association and CCTV, announced the nominees for last year's Golden Dove Awards. Although the album First Dream was released this year and could not be counted in last year's selection, Yang Yi and Murphy were both on the list of nominees. First, it was Murphy. Her song First Dream, last December, was nominated for the Golden Song of the Year. There were 10 songs in total. It had to be said that the judges' vision was still a little different from the public's. I Came Across the Sea to See You actually didn't become a candidate for the Best Song of the Year, which also made some fans of this song on microbroadcasting very dissatisfied. Dissatisfaction aside, there was no such thing as fairness when it came to judging awards. Therefore, the uproar from the netizens did not affect the judging committee at all. Murphy was also nominated as one of the nominees for the Best Female Pop Singer of the Year. This award is a little hard to say. After all, you only showed your strength at the end of the year. Mo Shawan said to Murphy. If Yang Yi and Murphy had nothing else to do during the day, they would come to the studio to record Yang Yi's 2 military songs. Although Murphy came to accompany Yang Yi, she was even happier than Yang Yi in the studio. It could be considered as letting a pregnant woman relax. Mo Shawan called today. Knowing that Yang Yi and the others were in the studio, she excitedly ran over to tell Yang Yi and Murphy about the nomination. But it's not like there's no chance at all. It just depends on whether you want to do some PR. Our company's PR ability is a little weak, so we might need Sister Ling to step in. The more Mo Shawan spoke, the softer her voice became. She knew that Murphy didn't like to do this kind of thing. What about Yang Yi? Didn't you say that he was also nominated? What did he nominate? Sure enough, Murphy didn't answer Mo Xiaojuan's question. Instead, she asked about Yang Yi's nomination with interest. Brother-in-Law was nominated for 2 awards. Pop music's Best Composer and Best Lyricist. Oh right, the song that Brother-in-Law wrote for Chen Yijie, Long Time No See, was also nominated for the annual Golden Melody Awards. Mo Shawan said. The online support for Long Time No See was higher than First Dream. However, there were still 8 other songs. In front of the unpredictable judges, it was hard to say who would win. You have more nominations than me. Murphy pushed Yang Yi and smiled sweetly. Awards don't mean anything to me. If you want it, I'll give it all to you. Yang Yi said indifferently. I don't want it either. When I was young, I wanted to win an award, but now that I'm old, I feel that it's all just floating clouds. Murphy waved her hand and said like an old man. She and Yang-yi were of course flirting. Her aged tone was fake, and she even learned some new words that Yang-yi usually came up with. Yang-yi smiled as he pinched Murphy's nose and said, "You're younger than me by half a year. You can't say that you're old, okay?" Mo Xiaowan rolled her eyes helplessly. These nominations were something that others couldn't ask for. Yet they didn't care about it. If word got out, how infuriating would it be? Ahem. Mo Xiaowan interrupted the two of them and said, "I'm here today with 2 invitations to the Golden Dove Award ceremony. I'd like to invite the 2 of you to attend." Yang-yi and Murphy were a couple in the entertainment industry. If they attended the Golden Dove Award ceremony, they would definitely be noticed by the media. "Do you want to go?" Yang-yi looked at Murphy. "I don't want to go. I'm so fat now and I don't want to see anyone. Furthermore, I don't like those events. They're all hypocrites." Murphy stretched out her arms and gestured with her palms as she complained to Yang-yi. "How can you not be fat when you're pregnant? You'll recover after you give birth, so don't worry." Yang-yi smiled as he continued. "It's fine if you don't want to attend the ceremony. If you're free, why don't you stay at home and study or sing for your child?" Although the child in her stomach had just started to take shape, Yang-yi and Murphy had already started to plan for the child's prenatal education. "Hee, I like it this way. No one is forcing me to do anything that I don't want to do." Murphy smiled as she continued. "In the past, Big Sister Ling always wanted me to attend those commercial performances in Tianmei. A bunch of bosses always wanted to come over, and it was so annoying. That's for sure. We set up our own studio to do what we want to do. Abandoning one's character and dignity for money. Wouldn't that be a very hard and boring life?" Yang-yi said with a faint smile. Furthermore, their family wasn't lacking in money at all. Mo Xiaowan was ignored once again. She asked pitifully, "Are you really not going? This award ceremony is the biggest one of the year. If you don't go, the judges will have opinions about you. Next year's award might be in jeopardy." Next year's Golden Dove Awards, which was the selection of this year's songs, was when Murphy really had a chance to win. "Furthermore, brother-in-law, you're very likely to win the Best Lyricist and Composer of the Year award," Mo Xiaowan added. However, Murphy and Yang-yi both shook their heads firmly. Their opinions were the same, and they weren't interested in winning the award. Well, there was no other way. Mo Xiaowan felt that she had to go on behalf of the two of them. Although representing wasn't a good choice, at least she wouldn't offend the people in the industry too much. Chapter 523. Shishi's big homework for the semester had finally arrived. Although Springfield Kindergarten didn't arrange exams for the children like other schools did, this semester, they still gave a big homework assignment to the children who were about to be promoted to a senior class and had a certain degree of hands-on learning ability. Teacher Mu had explained this matter to the parents at the parent-teacher conference a few days ago. Today, Shishi came home from kindergarten with a homework card that was similar to a task card in her school bag. Murphy took it, looked at it and read, "Yang-shi child, please complete the task of observing the growth of Xiaoyu with the guidance and help of your parents. The task period is 1 month. Please take good care of Xiaoyu and record the growth of Xiaoyu at the same time. Finally, make flexible use of various methods to produce a task result report." Shishi jumped on the sofa as if she was afraid that her mom didn't understand. She said with concern, "Mom, the teacher said that we have to raise Xiaoyu." Yang-yi touched his chin and said doubtfully, "Is this considered research? It should be a university or a middle school course, right? Why does the kindergarten let the children do this?" Murphy smiled and turned the paper over to Yang-yi. She said, "It's normal. This is just a small research. You see, there are no special requirements on the homework card, so it's an open assignment. The main purpose is to stimulate the children's interest in new things and cultivate their ability to do research by themselves." Yang-yi said helplessly, "Shishi is less than 5 years old. How can she do research by herself? Look at the task result report. Shishi can't even write. How can she write a report?" Shishi blinked her big eyes as she listened to the conversation between her parents. At this moment, the little girl pouted and said, "Papa, I can write. I can write my name. Alright, but other than your own name, you don't know how to write any other words. In this way, won't your mother and father have to do this homework in the end? Yang Yi said with some confusion. The report doesn't have to be completely written. Murphy patiently explained to Yang Yi. Didn't the teacher say that there are many ways to complete the report? You can also take photos, record audio, record videos, and so on. Of course, parents have to participate in this report. It's just like raising fish. Without your guidance, how could Shishi learn how to raise fish? However, this is a learning process. Tell her to take good care of Xiaoyu, observe him, and take notes during this month. Murphy smiled and said, even if the final result is not ideal and the report is bad, it doesn't matter. What's important is the process. Shishi will definitely learn a lot and grow a lot. Murphy had received an American-style education when she was a child. It was not like the exam-oriented education in China. In order to let the children have good results in exams, they were usually given a lot of tedious homework, which put a heavy mountain of exercises on the children's shoulders. In the past, Murphy had done a lot of homework like Shishi, which required her to do research on her own. She had to admit that although she did not like all the research, it had brought her a lot of interesting memories. Therefore, she was very satisfied with this kind of teaching method. Springfield Kindergarten was a kindergarten that combined Chinese and Western education. Murphy and Yang Yi had made the right choice. You're right. She's learning while playing. Yang Yi was convinced by Murphy's analysis. He nodded and began to wonder if he should teach Shishi how to use a camera and other equipment. He could buy Shishi a card camera that was not very cumbersome. Since it was Shishi's task, it was best to let Shishi do what she could. When Shishi saw that her parents had finished their discussion, she pulled her father's hand and asked doubtfully, Papa, but we don't have Xiaoyu. Yang Yi patted Shishi's little head, smiled and said, it's very easy to get Xiaoyu. Tomorrow, Papa will go to the flower and bird market and buy it for you. When you come back from kindergarten tomorrow, you will be able to see Xiaoyu. It's true. Sisi looked at her father, unable to contain her joy. The next day, on the way back from kindergarten, Shishi and Lan Xian, who were sitting in the back seat, were chatting. Xian, do you want to come to our house to see Xiaoyu? Papa bought Xiaoyu for me. Lan Xian had a chauffeur to take her home, but she liked to play with Shishi, so she cruelly refused her chauffeur and insisted on taking Yang Yi's Hummer off-road vehicle. It was not possible in the past, but now that they lived in the same villa area, Yang Yi could take her home. Moreover, Yang Yi had a good relationship with Lance Hao Kai. After the chauffeur asked his boss, he had to remove the child safety seat from his car and put it in Yang Yi's car. I don't want to see your Xiaoyu. We also have one at home. Yesterday, Grandma Wu said that she would buy Xiaoyu for me. Lan Xian shouted. Grandma Wu was Lan Xian's nanny, and she was also a very good cook. Okay then. Shishi was a little disappointed, but her heart had already flown home, and she was looking forward to seeing her Xiaoyu. After sending Lan Xian to her villa, Shishi finally returned to her home. Mom, I'm back. After the little girl with the small backpack got out of the car, she happily trotted all the way with Bao Bao, who was wagging his tail and was very happy. Before she took off her shoes, she couldn't wait to look inside with her little head. Murphy was sitting on the sofa with her elbows on her knees, looking at a beautiful fish tank on the coffee table. When she heard the noise, she smiled and waved to her daughter. Shishi, come here and see what this is. Shishi forgot to take off her backpack. She happily squeezed into her mother's arms and looked at the fish tank on the coffee table together. There were 4 little goldfish swimming leisurely in the fish tank. They were really small, like goldfish seedlings. However, although they were small, each little goldfish looked different. There were golden ones red ones with white spots, and white ones with red spots. He couldn't just buy one. Yang Yi was worried that Shishi would raise the goldfish to death. He wanted to buy a few more. At least there would be a spare tire. So beautiful. Shishi's big eyes were a little blurred as she looked at the 4 little goldfish and murmured. Mom and Papa spent a long time building this fish tank in order to give the little goldfish a good environment. They used to live in a very ugly plastic box. Murphy smiled and said to Shishi, The big fish tank and the materials inside it were bought by Yang Yi, but he wanted to do it himself. So, the couple who had nothing to do fiddled with the fish tank for a long time. They used dragon bone stones to make a small rockery and some fake seaweed. It was just a simple landscaping, and they didn't want to make an ecological fish tank. After all, they weren't crazy fans of raising goldfish, so they didn't want to make it too complicated. However, it looked pretty good. The little goldfish swam around the rockery and the fake seaweed, looking very comfortable. Yang Yi walked in and happened to hear Shishi say to her mother, "The little goldfish are pretty, and then this big fish tank is pretty too." The little girl even turned around and gestured. She was a little embarrassed as she giggled and said, "Mom, I thought the little goldfish were going to live in our family's swimming pool. There's really big water there. Such little fish living in the swimming pool. How are you going to find them to observe?" Yang Yi smiled. At night, just as Shishi was happily looking at the little goldfish, Lance Hao Kai called. Chapter 524. Yang Yi, did you see the homework assigned by the kindergarten? Why do I feel that my understanding is a bit wrong? As soon as the call was connected, Lance Hao Kai shouted from the other end of the phone. Half an hour ago, Lance Hao Kai had just returned from a business trip in Yangcheng to discuss the second round of financing. When he got home, he saw his daughter standing on the sofa, looking at a big basin on the coffee table from afar. Lan Xian shrunk her neck and wanted to poke her head out. She looked scared and curious at the same time. "Xian, what are you doing?" Lance Hao Kai was confused. He walked over to take a look and suddenly found that there was a long grass carp in the big basin on the coffee table. "I'm looking at the fish," Lan Xian said without turning her head. At this time the grass carp flopped. Although it didn't jump out, its tail splashed the water in the basin, which scared Lan Xian. Lance Hao Kai, who was nearby, couldn't help but tremble. Mother Wu. Lance Hao Kai couldn't help but call the housekeeper over and asked, "What's going on? You put a fish here." Grandma Wu was quite innocent. She quickly explained, "I didn't want to put it here. Xian said to put it here. And she said she wanted to raise it." Raise it? Lance Hao Kai's first reaction was that his daughter's brain was short-circuited. "Teacher Mu asked us to raise fish." Lan Xian felt her father's tone of blame, so she pouted and said unhappily. Lance Hao Kai thought for a long time and finally figured out the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that Lan Xian told Grandma Wu that she wanted fish. Then, Grandma Wu bought the grass carp that Lan Xian usually ate, and she bought the biggest one. Lan Xian didn't dislike it. She thought that it should be the grass carp, so she asked Grandma Wu to show it to her in the living room. Now Lance Hao Kai took Lan Xian's task card and complained to Yang Yi. The teacher clearly wrote that he wanted her to observe Xiaoyu. "No matter what, I don't think Xiaoyu is such a big grass carp, right?" On the other end of the phone, Yang Yi and Murphy, who was listening by the side, were already convulsing with laughter. Murphy, who was overjoyed, even asked Yang Yi to help her ask, "Sister Jing isn't at home? How could I make such a funny mistake?" Wu Jingjing was indeed not at home. She had been invited by her friends to go shopping abroad. After laughing, Yang Yi explained carefully to Lance Hao Kai, "It's not the big fish that we usually eat, but I think the teacher didn't limit the type of fish. As long as it's a small fish, it's easier to raise and can be observed by the children." "What did you buy for Shishi?" Lance Hao Kai asked. His main purpose was to learn from Yang Yi. They didn't have many pets at home. "I bought a goldfish for Shishi. It's about the size of her finger." After Yang Yi finished speaking, he looked at Shishi, who was looking up at him. He covered the phone and asked Shishi, "Shishi, your good friend Xian's nanny bought her the wrong fish. Now that you have 4 fish, are you willing to share 2 with Xian? Don't ask why it was 2 and not 1. Although Lance Hao Kai might not necessarily want it, Yang Yi felt that it was better to ask for Shishi's opinion before he said anything. Shishi blinked her large eyes and turned to look at the little goldfish she had just gotten, her eyes full of reluctance. "The little goldfish is so cute, very pretty and can swim," the little girl muttered in her heart. "But Xian doesn't have any little goldfish. What should she do? Will she be sad?" After all, Lon Excian was her good friend. After moving to the villa, Lon Excian would often bring some delicious snacks from abroad to share with her. So after some hesitation, Shishi nodded and said to her father, "All right, then I'll give some to Excian Air." Yang let go of the phone and said, "Big brother Lon, I bought 4 goldfish for Shishi. Why don't I share 2 with you?" "Oh right, do you have a fish tank at home to keep fish?" "We have a fish tank, but it hasn't been used in a long time. I'll get Mother Wu to clean it up tomorrow." Lans Hao Kai smiled and said, "Forget about the 4 little goldfish at home. Leave them for Shishi to keep. If Excian Air takes them, Shishi might cry for a while." Lon Excian was like that. If she let someone else take away any of her treasures, she would cry for a few days. Shishi won't. She just said that she was willing to share with Excian Air. Yang Yi said, "Hey, your daughter is so nice. I really want to exchange one with you." Lans Hao Kai said cheerfully, "Ha, I'm just kidding. Help me thank Shishi for her kindness to Excian Air. But there's really no need. You haven't seen our fish tank. It can fit any person. Your 2 little goldfish are too little. Tomorrow I'll get someone to get more goldfish for Excian Air to keep together. Otherwise, it'll be empty and boring." Since Lans Hao Kai said so, Yang Yi let it go. Before hanging up, Lans Hao Kai seemed to have remembered something and said, "Oh right, Yang Yi, don't say I didn't remind you. Your house is a restricted area for fish. There are 3 cats." "That's right. Cats." Yang Yi turned to look at Dodo, who was squinting on the cat tree and wagging its tail leisurely. The other 2 had disappeared into some room. Cats love to eat fish. However, Yang Yi didn't say anything. After putting down the phone, he smiled and said to Shishi, "Shishi, Excian Air's father said that he would buy goldfish for Excian Air, so you don't have to take your goldfish. Then he said that he wanted to thank you. He said that you were willing to share with your friends. What a beautiful heart." Shishi was stunned for a moment. She still needed some time to react. After figuring out that Excian Air didn't need her goldfish, and that she didn't have to part with them, the little girl's reluctant expression suddenly became happy. Then she was praised. Murphy gave Shishi 2 thumbs up and praised her with a bright smile. "Shishi is really sensible. You're not stingy. You know how to share. You're great." Shishi smiled happily. She twisted her body, a little embarrassed. Then, with a sweet heart, the little girl turned her face to look at her goldfish. She was mumbling something in a low voice. Maybe she was talking to the goldfish, telling them that they had escaped a disaster? Yang Yi walked to one side with Murphy and muttered, "If Brother Lon didn't tell me, I would have forgotten about this. Our 3 cats are like sending sheep to a wolf's den. It shouldn't be that bad. Just now, after we finished eating, we didn't bother with the fish tank. We didn't see Xiao Guai and the others do anything to the goldfish." Murphy said, "But we really have to be careful. Maybe one day they'll be interested and eat the fish." "How?" Yang Yi asked. "Xiao Guai and the others are very naughty. They're everywhere. That day when we came back, didn't we see them climbing up to the roof? I don't think it's safe to put the fish in any room. How about this? Put them in the dining room tonight. Use a basket to cover them. They won't be able to move," Murphy suggested. "Then go buy a wire mesh cover tomorrow. Usually when Shishi isn't home, we'll use the wire mesh cover. Put some weight on it. When Shishi wants to see the goldfish, we'll remove it for her." Yang Yi understood. He clapped his hands and smiled. "No need to put weight on it. I know how to do it. I can carve a mortise and tenon structure out of wood to hold the wire mesh. If we don't open it, the wire mesh cover won't be able to be lifted. Xiao Guai and the others don't have high IQ to unlock it." Chapter 525. A few days had passed, and under Yang Yi's strict protection, the 4 little goldfish were not harmed. Actually, little Guai and the others had no intention of touching the little goldfish. When the little goldfish first arrived home, they came over to take a look with interest, but they did not approach them later on. Was it because there was enough food? Cece also gave each of the 4 little goldfish a name. However, the little girl's vocabulary was rather limited, so little gold, little red, little white, and big white were simply distinguished just like that. However, goldfish were not family pets. Although Shishi liked their small and beautiful appearance, they were separated by a glass tank and did not communicate, so it was difficult for her to develop strong feelings for them. So within a few days, Shishi's interest in the 4 little goldfish decreased a lot. On the other hand, Steamed Bun, who was full of energy and jumped around every day, wanting the little owner to take him out to play, was favored again. Yang Yi saw from the camera, he gave Shishi that Steamed Bun's photos took up most of the time. The rest of the photos were of the little goldfish and little Guai. There were a few photos of little Gray and Dodo, but those two did not seem to like the camera. In the photos, they either had a look of disdain or were facing the camera sideways. Dodo also had a photo with Steamed Bun. Steamed Bun was wagging his tail and running happily with Dodo. It was interesting. Among the 3 kittens, Dodo had the best relationship with Steamed Bun. Sometimes, Steamed Bun would take a fancy to the chicken rice that Dodo was eating. There was no salt, but there was some canned cat food inside. Dodo would see him come over, and take the initiative to raise his head and sit on the side to watch Steamed Bun eat. Little Guai and Little Gray could now get along well with Steamed Bun, but they just did not want to fight with him. They did not want to play with him. Every time Steamed Bun ran over, Little Guai and Little Gray would jump onto the table or sofa and look disdainfully at Steamed Bun, who could only wait anxiously with his short legs. Even so, Steamed Bun was a big-hearted guy. He still looked for Little Guai and Little Gray to play with him every day. After all, the little owner was not at home all the time. Shishi liked to take photos now. Yang Yi gave her a card camera and taught her how to press the shutter and how to take pictures through the screen. The little girl treated it as her new toy and happily took pictures everywhere. It was Saturday and Yang Yi was going to take her exam. Yang Yi brought her to the coffee shop to wait for her to finish her exam. Because Shishi liked to take photos recently, Murphy dressed her up like a little photographer today. She wore a camouflage vest and a small gray felt hat. There were a few female students who didn't know Shishi and came to the cafe to drink coffee and chat. When they saw Shishi passing by, they praised her. "Wow, little girl, why are you dressed so cool?" Hee. Shishi stopped and looked at the girls. She didn't know what to say and could only smile embarrassedly. "It's true, it's very beautiful." The girls praised. "Your parents have good taste. The clothes are well matched." "Sister, do you want me to take a photo for you?" Shishi asked shyly as she picked up the camera hanging in front of her neck. Shishi wanted to return the favor. Since she was praised by these beautiful girls, she naturally wanted to repay them with her most sincere service. "You want to take photos of us?" The girls laughed. "Do you really know how to take photos? I thought you were just carrying a prop." Shishi pouted slightly and said, "I know how to take photos. I took a lot of photos. There are Steamed Bun's Xiao Guai." Seeing that Shishi was unhappy, the girls quickly comforted her. "It's not that. I'm not saying that you don't know how to take photos. I'm just asking. It's amazing that you can take photos at such a young age." Cece smiled and said, "My papa taught me. My papa said that he wanted to take a picture of Xiaoyu himself. Then he wanted to look at it from here. He wanted to put Xiaoyu in the middle and press here." If Shishi was allowed to continue, she could finish the entire story and then extend it to the next story for half a day. Fortunately, one of the girls who liked to look pretty smiled and said, "Little girl, can you wait for a moment? Let me touch up my makeup." Shishi blinked her eyes in confusion, but she still nodded her head. Every girl liked to look pretty. When this girl said that she wanted to touch up her makeup, the other girls hurriedly took out their makeup boxes from their bags. Some of them touched up their lipsticks, some put on their foundation, and some even drew their eyebrows. It was originally just a small photo shoot, but they treated it seriously. Shishi curiously watched the girls put on their makeup. For some reason, the girl was watching with great interest. "It's done." The young lady who was the first to say that she wanted to touch up her makeup pursed her lips with light red lipstick, and said to Cece with a smile. It didn't take long for the few big sisters to lean on each other and face Shishi with smiles on their faces. Everyone's posture was different. Some held up 2 fingers, some puffed up their cheeks, and some stuck their cheeks to their friends with bigger cheeks. Shishi skillfully turned on the card camera. However, her hand was a little fast and pressed the shutter button. The screen entered the photo interface. She wanted to exit, but she pressed the wrong button. She didn't know why, but it jumped to the settings interface. The girl was a little confused. She blinked her big eyes and pressed here and there, not knowing how to restore it. Fortunately, Yang Yi taught her a simple method. She lowered her head. Her left hand held the camera and pressed it to her chest. Her right hand pressed the switch button. After a while, she confirmed that the camera was turned off and turned it back on. The girls looked at Shishi's operation in confusion and asked kindly, "What's wrong? Is there a problem? Do you want me to fix it for you?" "It's done. Thank you, sister." The girl was very polite. She smiled sweetly and held the camera up high with her two little hands. She started to look at the screen for the shot. Shishi took pictures very quickly. She pressed the shutter button and then put down the camera. She raised her head and said to the girls, "I'm done." Done. The girls' smiles froze. They all shouted at the same time. "So fast? I didn't even get my expression right. You didn't even say 3, 2, 1. Shishi looked at them in confusion. Her father didn't teach her how to say 3, 2, 1. Fortunately, the girls patiently taught her how to do it. Shishi said 3, 2, 1 and took another picture for them. "Little girl, let me have a look. Let's see how well you did," the girls said to Cece excitedly. Shishi handed her camera over. Although she had to remove the strap from her neck, the girl looked at the girls expectantly, hoping to receive their praise again. However, how good could a picture taken by a little girl less than 5 years old look? The girls looked and were disappointed. The expression in the first picture wasn't good, and the second picture was blurry. Even adults' hands would shake when taking pictures, not to mention Shishi. When she pressed the shutter button, her hand would often shake. Although the card camera's configuration was good and had the latest optical anti-shake technology, it would still be blurry if it shook too much. Therefore, it was normal for 2 or 3 of the 10 pictures taken by the girl to be blurry. They whispered, "Ah, forget it. She's a child after all. Don't ask for too much. When we were so young, we didn't even know what a camera was. At least the shot is good. The 4 of us are in the picture." Therefore, they raised their heads and handed the card camera back to Shishi. They smiled and said, "Little girl, you did a good job. Continue to practice and try to make it look better. In the future, you can take better pictures for me." Shishi couldn't tell what they were talking about. She caught the key phrase, "You did a good job." Then she skipped away happily. In a secluded booth far away, Yang Yi had already noticed Shishi's movements. However, he didn't disturb them. Instead, he continued to talk to Guizi about the art test. Although he was rambling, he was still very nervous. He didn't know how Shishi would do. Would she pass? Chapter 526. The art examination in this world was completed within a day. There were no preliminary, second or third tests. After the examination, the scores and rankings would be announced a few days later. Just like Guizi last year, although he knew that he would not make it, he gave up only after the rankings were announced. The Performing Arts Department of Jiang City Media University had a total of 3 tests. The first was recitation, the second was talent show, and the last one was comprehensive performance test. It tested one's acting skills with real swords and spears. When Yang Huan stepped into the examination hall, she was still a little nervous. She discovered that although the rules stated that the candidates were not allowed to wear makeup or high-heeled shoes, there were still some girls who had put on makeup. Some of them had put on makeup without traces, while others ignored the rules and put on light makeup. When she walked closer, she could smell some of their scent. Before long, a serious-looking female examiner came out with a stack of wet tissues. She walked towards the students who had put on makeup and asked, "Do you want to do it yourself? Or do you need us to help you?" This made Yang Huan click her tongue. She finally got to experience firsthand the stories that Du Yuanlei and some of the senior sisters from the Performing Arts Department told her about girls who were lucky but ended up embarrassing themselves. However, there were still 1 or 2 girls who had put on makeup without traces. But Yang Huan didn't take it to heart. Sister Huan had a big heart. After the farce, Yang Huan calmed down and performed well in the next 2 tests. In the recitation test, Yang Huan's voice was clear and powerful. Her pronunciation was clear. She didn't stutter or break her voice when she read the prose. Moreover, from her appearance, she didn't have the delicate and pitiful look that some girls pretended to have. Her neat ponytail, tall and straight figure, and her expression was neither servile nor overbearing. She tried her best to show the vitality and elegance that a girl of her age should have. Those who took part in the art examination were all good-looking. Compared to them, Yang Huan's looks were below average. However, Yang Huan and Yang Yi both had a pair of big eyes. Even without contact lenses, one would think that they were big. Her bright eyes and white teeth made people feel comfortable looking at her. She also left a good impression on the judges. After the recitation test, Yang Huan returned to the waiting line and continued with the talent test. There were more tricks in the talent test. The examinees in front of Yang Huan either performed music or dance. Some of them also performed folk art. For example, a male student from Lu province performed a monologue with a clapperboard. When it was Yang Huan's turn, she faced the examiners and said, "I will be performing martial arts." Martial arts. The examinees lining up at the back all revealed surprised expressions. Although they didn't dare to whisper to each other, some people couldn't help but sneer in their hearts. Do you think martial arts is so easy to play? The examiners aren't fools. They're experienced and knowledgeable. They can tell the difference between real and fake at a glance. A few years ago, quite a number of examinees had thought of performing some unpopular talents, such as Shu Lai Bao, Allegro, etc., or Wushu, as mentioned by Yang Huan, were easier to attract the examiner's attention. That was indeed the case. When one was tired of eating big fish and big meat, they would always want to eat something simple and plain. This example wasn't very appropriate, but the principle was similar. Most of the examinees performed music or dance. If they occasionally performed something new, the examiners would naturally like it. But gradually, the examinees realized that this method didn't work. The examiners found it fresh, but some of the performances that were performed after a few months of practice gave the examiners a feeling that they were pretentious and destroying the classics. Naturally, the examiners wouldn't give high marks. Instead, they dug their own grave by trying to find a new path. Although the examinees were waiting to see a joke, Yang Huan was very calm. When the examiner signaled for her to perform, Yang Huan got into a starting position and performed the Yang family's heirloom Hong Quan. When an expert made a move, it was obvious whether they were skilled or not. Yang Huan's skills were not as good as Yang Qing's and Yang Yi's, but she had been practicing martial arts since she was a child. Her steady and powerful punches, her agile movements, her stiff back support, and her soft and strong bending chop immediately made the examiner's eyes light up. This is real kung fu. One of the examiners who often interacted with kung fu when filming movies couldn't help but whisper to the examiner next to him. Of course, it was real kung fu. Moreover, the set of kung fu that Yang Huan was performing was rearranged by Yang Yi based on the original set of moves that had been passed down in his family. Without losing the characteristics of Hong Quan, the combination of moves was as wide as possible, making it more enjoyable to watch. Also, many of Yang Huan's friends, such as Guozi, Du Yuanlei, Qin Wen, and the others, gave Yang Huan advice. They taught her to face the examiners directly or sideways when performing kung fu, so that the examiners wouldn't be able to see her back. There were also some little tricks that made Yang Huan's kung fu performance more lively and interesting. After the talent segment, one of the examiners told me, "Examinee, do you know that there is a shortage of female stars in the Chinese film industry?" In the coffee shop, Yang Huan, who had just returned from the examination, was happily talking to Yang Yi, Ding Xiang, Guozi, and a few friends who were concerned about her performance in the art examination. Yang Huan was not stupid. She knew that the examiners must have a good impression of her when they said that. Her score in this segment should not be low. Your talent is your strength. Sister Huan, I told you that no one can compare to you in terms of height and skills. You will definitely be able to do it, Guozi said. Who said that no one can compare to me in terms of height? There is a girl in our group who is 1.75 meters tall. Her legs are so long. Yang Huan said. The first two segments together only account for 50% of the total score. The performance is the highlight. How did you do in the performance segment? Du Yuanlei, who had been preparing materials and venues for the movie project, had also taken some time out to come over. She had not relaxed yet, so she asked. The performance was a skit about visiting a zoo. The people in our group were fighting over the roles. Yang Huan said. They were all fighting over the roles of tigers and animals. Because it was easier to perform as animals. Qin Wen nodded and said, but it's okay. Our tutor said that only by performing ordinary roles, can one be considered a real talent. What role did you play in the end? I played the sweeper. Originally, I also wanted to play the tiger because I thought that I could be very fierce. Haha. But seeing that they were quarreling so much that the tutor frowned and wanted to intervene, I didn't fight with them. Instead, I quietly took the role of a sweeper. Sister Du, didn't you tell me about some skills in the performance test? One of them is how to play an ordinary role well. Yang Huan said with a smile. In fact, what Du Yuanlei taught Yang Huan was how to attract the director's attention in a small role. This was a real case that had happened when she was directing a student film. It was a scene in a small store. The male lead wanted to buy a bottle of water and a bag of finger pancakes, but when he was talking to the supporting actor, he forgot what he was doing and missed the finger pancakes. A boy who was purely playing a small role next to him noticed it. He also wanted to add scenes for himself, so he picked up a bag of finger pancakes and asked the shop owner loudly, "Boss, how much is this bag of finger pancakes?" Indirectly, he also reminded the male lead of this action. Of course, it was not allowed to add scenes randomly, but the budget of a student film was tight. If there were too many NGs, they would not be able to continue shooting. Du Yuanlei felt that there was no big flaw in this scene, so she did not reshoot it. But after this small incident, she found that the boy who added scenes for himself was not bad at acting. Later, in another scene, she asked the boy to change his costume and play a small role. The boy also seized the opportunity and successfully became a special cast member from a small role. Although it was only a special cast member in a student film, Du Yuanlei knew that the performance test would not give a script. The director would specify a scene and let the examinees act freely. This way, this little trick of adding scenes for oneself might come in handy. Yang Huan, who was playing the role of the sweeping auntie, entered the scene with a non-existent broom when there was a problem with the skit performance. While sweeping left and right, she mumbled in the dialect of her hometown while bending her back and sweeping right and left. Oh my God! Lift your foot. There is a cigarette but under your foot. Okay. Brother, don't stand so far away. What can you see from this distance? The tiger is locked in a cage, not lying under your foot. Why are you being so careful? This performance was not long, and it did not deliberately steal the limelight, so much so that it made people feel disgusted. However, it appeared at the right time to give the male student who was stuck with his lines time to catch his breath and rearrange his lines, so that the entire skit performance could continue. If I were the examiner, I would definitely give you a high score, Qin Wen said with a smile after watching Yang Huan's performance. The others also gave their affirmation one after another. I don't know. I think there is a problem. I don't have much time to perform. Will the teachers not give me a high score because of this? Although Yang Huan was in a good mood during the performance, she was not that optimistic. Everyone was silent for a while. They were not sure. After all, Guozi and the others were only students. They could not read the minds of the examiners. But after a while they comforted Yang Huan. No, it won't. As long as your performance is good, it will be fine. And you should be able to get a high score in the previous performances. Overall, you should have no problem getting on the list. Yang Yi listened to them talking at the side, and had a rough idea of what was going on. He smiled and said, no matter how she did in the exam, Huan did well today. Thank you all for tutoring her, and giving her advice. Tonight I will treat you to dinner. Everyone was happy that they were going to dinner. Yang Huan was even happier. She could finally break free from the heavy pressure of reviewing. Although she still had to wait for the release of the results and prepare for the college entrance examination, it was good to be relieved. Papa, but my camera is out of battery. Hearing her father say that there was an event tonight, Cece held the card camera, pulled her father's trousers, and said awkwardly, "It's okay. We have to go back and pick up Mom. Papa will get you a new battery," Yang Yi said with a smile. She, I heard that you can take pictures now. Remember to take a picture of me later." Yang Huan squatted down with a smile and gave Shishi a big hug. Okay. I took a lot of pictures." The little girl was hugged. She leaned back and giggled. However, Yang Yi and the others did not know that in the afternoon, another piece of news about Murphy was released by the media when they were happily having dinner for Yang Huan. Chapter 527. The news of Murphy leaving Tian Mei was actually kept to a small extent within Tian Mei. Only Niu Meiling, Jian Chua, and Zhu Jie knew about it. Therefore, the media praised Tian Mei for being lenient towards Murphy because of the asymmetry of the news. But paper can't wrap fire, not to mention that they were facing reporters who were eager to expose more shocking news. One reporter, through some shady deals, got a Tian Mei agent to reveal that Murphy's contract would end in July. Of course, the agent didn't know if Murphy had renewed her contract with the company. After all, Niu Meiling didn't reveal any information to them. However, the reporter saw something fishy from this point. The termination of a contract might be a family secret, but the renewal of a contract should be considered a good thing. A normal management company would announce the renewal of their artist's contract to the world, so as to drive away the covetous eyes of other companies. But Tian Mei didn't release any information internally or externally, which was very strange. Looking at Mo Fei's contract, there was only more than a month left, and there was no news of a contract renewal, so there was only one possibility. As a reporter, boldly hypothesizing and decisively fabricating stories were their basic skills. Therefore, on the day of Yang Huani's exam, the headline of an entertainment evening newspaper was, "Murphy has not renewed her contract." Her original management company, Tian Mei, is suspected to have been headhunted by a top record company. Murphy's singing skills had been widely recognized in the industry. Although Murphy had told Mo Shaowan to ignore her this year, there had been record companies and management companies trying to get in touch with Murphy and headhunt Tian Mei. Therefore, although this exposed news caused an uproar in the industry, they didn't think it was ridiculous. Instead, they were all guessing which big shot was behind this. On the internet, Murphy's fans were also excitedly analyzing Murphy's next company. Ordinary agencies and record companies wouldn't be able to poach Murphy. After all, Tian Mei's strength in the industry was not bad, and a singer like Murphy wouldn't stoop to a small company, so they could only guess from the top record companies. There were 6 major record companies in the Chinese music industry. 4 of them had their own female singers, but 2 of them weren't as famous as Murphy. For example, the record company that Li Manman was in. So there were a total of 4 record companies that had the potential to poach Murphy. Which record company could it be? No matter which company it was, the reporter who first exposed the news had already earned enough attention. It was just that he lacked follow-up and was unable to give more information. After all, he himself did not know which company it was. What was more disappointing was that Zhuo Zai, who had been making waves in the gossip news recently, was unable to provide any concrete information. LVU also posted a summary article the next day in order to ride on the hot topic. He detailed the past of Murphy and Tian Mei, but the whole content was about history. There was no constructive judgment at all. However, the next day, 2 record companies had already issued statements one after another, saying that they had no intention of recruiting Murphy in order to appease the emotions of their artists. It seemed that the scope of this speculation had narrowed again. Yang Yi and Murphy came back from dinner in the evening and learned the news. However, Murphy didn't rush to clarify or announce it. She was also waiting for Tian Mei's reaction. The next day, Niu Meiling called and asked Murphy to go back and talk about it in detail. If Yang Yi wanted to come, he could also come together to discuss it. After all, he didn't have a good impression of Niu Meiling. Yang Yi didn't feel at ease with Murphy, so he accompanied her to Tian Mei. However, the progress of this conversation surprised Yang Yi. Niu Meiling actually gave in. On the night when they returned from Tian Mei, the official micro-broadcasting of Tianmei Entertainment Agency released an announcement to the public. After a friendly negotiation between the company and Murphy, the agency contract between Murphy and Tianmei has been terminated. We deeply regret the departure of Murphy. Murphy is a conscientious artist. She has invested her passion in the music industry for 15 years and has also created great value and wealth for Tianmei. Tianmei and Murphy will maintain a friendly relationship. We hope that there will be opportunities to continue cooperation in the future. When this announcement came out, not only Tianmei Agency, but the entire entertainment industry was shocked. Murphy really left? She really terminated her contract with Tianmei? Tianmei was fine internally. A few days ago, Zhu Jie tenaciously reached the top of the new song sales chart with That Night, which was scolded by music critics. Although his reaching the top was called a disgrace in the industry, after all, the results were there. No one could ignore Zhu Jie's brilliance. With a new signboard, even if Tianmei lost Murphy, it couldn't be said to be at the end of the line. But the entertainment industry was already in an uproar. Where did Murphy go? This announcement only said that Tianmei and Murphy terminated their contract, but it didn't mention what Murphy's next home was. Was Murphy going to retire at the top of the tide again? After getting pregnant, she disappeared from the music industry for a few years again? In fact, when Murphy and Yang Yi returned home, they still felt that it was a bit unreal. Niu Meiling took the initiative to terminate the contract with Murphy and restore Murphy's freedom. This move was something they never expected. With Niu Meiling's profit-oriented character, how could she be willing to terminate the contract in advance? Even if Murphy doesn't work, her brand image has been earning money for Tianmei, around millions a month. Perhaps it was because Zhu Jie reached the top, which made Niu Meiling feel gratified and in a good mood. Or maybe she finally understood the power of the man behind Mo Fei, so she decided to show goodwill to Mo Fei even if she had to give up the millions of benefits in order to maintain a good relationship with Yang Yi. However, Murphy didn't let the anxious fans wait for too long. After discussing with Yang Yi for a night, the next morning, she also forwarded Tianmei's announcement on micro-broadcasting and briefly told the fans where she was going. Thank you for your concern. Tianmei and I terminated the contract amicably. I am very grateful for Tianmei's 15 years of careful cultivation and Lingjie's care. I hope we can still keep in touch in the future. I want to clarify that I am not going to join another record company. Leaving Tianmei is just a matter of my work philosophy. In the future, Yang Yi and I will set up our own studio. We have already named it Fei Yi. We will continue to work hard and create more beautiful music for everyone. This is our wish and we will not let everyone down. Murphy's whereabouts surprised the industry, but it couldn't be said to be an accident. After all, for a singer of Murphy's level, it was normal for her to set up her own studio. However, while Murphy's fans were pleasantly surprised, they also had some small worries. A star studio will face a shortage of resources. Although Murphy has a husband who writes songs for her, in terms of album distribution, I'm afraid that whether it's channels or publicity, they won't be able to reach the level of a record company or agency. Others secretly rejoiced. The fans were really worried about Mo Fei. They also didn't want to see Mo Fei's record not being able to sell. Whatever, no matter which store Murphy's albums are sold in the future, we will buy them and support them. Some fans called out in the comments. Tianmei's early termination of the contract meant that Mo Fei could record her own new song? Now that she's 3 months pregnant, her situation has basically stabilized. Even if she can't go to any concerts, recording songs in the studio is no problem at all. Chapter 528. After Yang Yi and Murphy announced that they were going to set up a studio, they disappeared from the public eye again. The media swarmed to Jiangcheng, but they couldn't find anyone to interview. They gritted their teeth in hatred, but they couldn't do anything about it. However, some of the media were more witty. They knew to get the news from the Industry and Commerce Bureau. First, the name Phoebe Studio was registered. Although the registration address was confidential, it also showed that Murphy had indeed left Tianmei to set up her own studio. Secondly, the agency that released the Glory single for Yang Yi was also dug out by the resourceful reporters. Hua brothers, this name was very flamboyant. It was obviously related to Yang Yi. Therefore, the reporters made up a lot of eye-catching stories, such as the spy story where Yang Yi abducted Murphy in the name of marriage, or the Western cowboy story where Murphy fell into Tianmei's mud pit, and Yang Yi helped her get out of it. Only Tianmei's public relations were busy clarifying. Yang Yi and Murphy were indifferent to these rumors. At the end of May, Mo Xiaowan, who replaced Yang Yi and Murphy to appear at the China Music Golden Dove Awards award ceremony, personally clarified the reason why Murphy left Tianmei and the couple's current situation under the siege of the media. We left Tianmei because Murphy and the agency had a friendly communication and finally reached a consensus. First of all, it's not unusual for Murphy and Yang Yi to set up their own independent studio. After all, they are husband and wife. Second, Murphy and Tianmei have always had a good relationship. Tianmei's boss, Madame Niu Meiling, is also Murphy's teacher and friend. After Niu Meiling repeatedly urged Murphy to stay, she knew that Murphy had made up her mind. She also generously agreed to let Murphy set up her own studio and gave her blessing. This was already discussed before, but Murphy also wanted to minimize the impact on Tianmei, so she didn't announce the news until this month. Mo Xiaowan actually didn't have a good impression of Niu Meiling, but after all, Niu Meiling let Murphy leave in advance, so now in front of the media, she gave Niu Meiling enough face. The reason why Yang Yi and Murphy didn't attend the award ceremony is that they went back to the countryside. Yang Yi's only biological brother is getting married, so there's a conflict in terms of timing, so we can only apologize to the organizers. As for their future schedule, if there is, I will also release it in the future under the name of Phoebe Studio. Thank you for your concern and blessings, Mo. Mo Xiaojuan's reason was not wrong. After Yang Yi's art examination, when the storm broke out, Yang Yi's family and Yang Huan did indeed return to Wadaiku village to attend Yang Qing and Zheng Shiyi's wedding. He even brought Yang Qing to a car shop in Pegua County to buy a pickup truck that could be used for driving around the countryside as Yang Qing's wedding gift. However, Mo Xiaowan still lied. The wedding had no conflict with the award ceremony, and Yang Yi and Murphy had already returned to Jiangcheng. Because they drove a new car, and it was the most comfortable minivan, no reporters were able to track Yang Yi's whereabouts. What were they doing now? Yang Yi and Murphy were teaching Shishi how to make an observation report. After more than a week of observing the little goldfish, Shishi had already accumulated some materials. Yang Yi helped Shishi pick out a batch of usable photos from her card camera's memory card. He even used a color printer and photo paper that specialized in printing photos to print them out. Look at these. These are the recordings of you observing the little goldfish every day. Dad has also renamed the titles according to the time. Yang Yi was controlling the laptop, but he pointed at the big TV screen in the study room as he spoke to the little girl. Wow. Shishi was, after all, still too young. Although the little girl had a strong interest in electronic devices and had a good receptive ability, she was still a little confused when she heard what her dad said. She couldn't get a clearer idea. She could only look at her dad for a while, then look at the screen for a while and exclaim in admiration. It was as if these operations were something amazing. Play it. I want to hear what Shishi recorded, Murphy said excitedly. Yang Yi nodded and clicked on an audio casually. There was a rustling sound coming from the sound system in the study room. Shishi looked around in confusion, wanting to know where the strange sound was coming from. But soon a little girl's confused voice was heard. Today. The voice was very similar to hers. Shishi blinked her big eyes and turned to look at her dad. It was as if she wanted to remind him or ask him a question. The recording was very good. Although there was some noise, they could still hear Murphy's gentle voice. Today is May 23rd. Today is May 23rd. It seemed that the little girl finally stopped fiddling with the microphone of the recording pen. The little girl's voice finally became clear. It was obviously Shishi's clear, sweet and soft voice. I saw that little you didn't grow up. Are you done with the observation? Murphy asked with a smile. You've been saying this for a few days in a row. You have to say more. For example, how did they eat? Did they eat a lot? Did they swim happily? Or did they not want to move and were as lazy as a piglet? She, who was sitting on the side and listening with her mouth slightly open, finally confirmed that it was her. And these conversations reminded the little girl of the situation that day. Papa, look. She impatiently pulled on her dad's sleeve. Yang looked down and saw the little girl holding her recording pen with a smile on her face. Her mouth was moving, and she seemed to be saying something silently. Just then, Shishi's recording came from the sound system. Little you ate a lot, and then little white ate the most. He will definitely grow up quickly. It turned out that the little girl was dubbing. Shishi fiddled with it for a while and couldn't help but smile happily. She said to her dad, "Papa, this is what I did, and then I said so much." She was patiently explaining the recording process to her dad. Of course, the little girl forgot that it was her dad who taught her how to use the recording pen before. After fiddling with the materials, Yang took out a card from the big notebook. This card could be disassembled or assembled with a ring buckle. You first paste the photos on the first day on this card. Choose a place yourself. Remember to leave space for writing and drawing, Yang said to Shishi. Yang helped Shishi paste the double-sided stickers on the back of the photos. He also taught her how to buckle them. The little girl had now mastered the technique of playing with the double-sided stickers. She even poked them with her little finger and had a lot of fun. It was time to work, so Shishi became serious. The little girl pursed her lips and hesitated for a while with the photos on the big card. Then she pasted them. Yang and Murphy watched from the side and didn't interfere with Shishi's choice. However, Shishi was still too young. She didn't know how to allocate space, so when she pasted the photos on the back, she found that there was a lot of space, but there was one photo that couldn't be pasted. "Papa, what should I do?" The little girl grabbed the last photo. In a daze, she could only turn her little head and look at her father pitifully, asking him for help. Chapter 529. In fact, Yang could have helped Cece finish this stage of the report by himself with just this little bit of effort. But it was meaningless. He had to let the little girl do it herself. He had to let her do as much work as she could. Only then would she learn something new and have some new experiences. For example, frustration and helplessness. The photos were not big, but they were not small either. They were pasted everywhere. She still had one that couldn't be pasted. If she insisted on pasting it, she would only be able to cover the other photos. What should we do? She was at her wit's end. She could only look at her father with her big, pitiful eyes. We can't tear down the ones that have already been pasted. If we do, it will ruin the cardboard, Yang said to Shishi. But it hasn't been pasted yet, the little girl mumbled as she pushed the remaining photo in front of her father. Since we can't stick this one, we can only give up and use the ones that have already been pasted. Yang rubbed Shishi's little head and comforted her softly. It's okay. The remaining ones are enough. Okay. Although Shishi said so, she still looked at the remaining photo reluctantly. She felt that she hadn't done a good job. There was no smile on the little girl's delicate little face. Yang took this opportunity to demonstrate to Shishi with the photos from the next day and the second cardboard. So you have to plan from the beginning. How many photos are there, and how to allocate the space. For example, you can do this. Before you tear off the double-sided tape, take these photos and fiddle with them on the cardboard. If you don't place them well at first, you can adjust them. Shishi looked at them seriously. With her smart little brain, it wasn't difficult for her to learn these simple skills. After the last few cards were successfully pasted with the photos, Shishi finally smiled and gradually got rid of the impact of the initial setback. Next, Murphy and Shishi used colored pencils to draw on the cardboard. There were many narrow gaps and spaces around the photos. If there was white space, it would look monotonous. Drawing some beautiful patterns or cute patterns would add a lot of color to the report. Shishi was quite fond of drawing. Previously, under Yang guidance, although she did not deliberately learn those drawing techniques, the little girl could still draw the images of small fish, ducklings, and other animals swiftly. Moreover, they looked decent and were not scribbles. In the middle, Yang walked away. Because the 8 treasures chicken soup for dinner was rather complicated, It had to be mixed with Cotinopsis palaceula, Poria cocos, Rehmannia chinensis, angelica root, white peony, and other herbs. After that, it had to be washed clean and placed in a clean gauze bag. After that, it had to be butchered. Moreover, it had to be boiled in another pot for a few minutes. In the middle, the water had to be boiled first. Then it had to be seasoned with scallions, ginger, salt, cooking wine, and other condiments. After that, it had to be simmered slowly for an hour. The process was very troublesome, but this soup was very beneficial for Murphy's pregnancy. In addition, it was delicious and nutritious. Both he and Shishi could drink it. It was also very helpful for Shishi's healthy growth. Therefore, even if it was troublesome, Yang Yi would change the way he cooked for Murphy and Shishi every day. Yang Yi only came back after the fire was simmered. Shishi was still seriously drawing pictures. She had been drawing for half an hour. Moreover, there were more than 10 colorful cardboard cards. However, she did not lose her patience and continued to draw with her head lowered. Shishi, why is the little goldfish you drew green? Yang Yi looked behind her for a while, and could not help but laugh. How can there be a green goldfish? Shishi raised her little head and looked at her father. She said innocently, but after little fish eats grass, it will become green. Steamed bun will also become green. The little girl said that the bun had turned green because the naughty little puppy had run, rolled, and played on the lawn of the villa after a day of rain. In the end, when it came back, its beautiful yellow fur had become dirty and stained with a lot of grass clippings and mud. Yang Yi did not care about anything else at that time. He hurriedly took steamed bun to take a bath and scolded this naughty puppy with a stern face. He did not know that after seeing this scene, Shishi's imagination had run wild and made such a strange connection. If eating grass would make one green, then why didn't Popeye turn into the Hulk? Yang Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. He wanted to explain, but Murphy stopped him. She did not let Yang Yi affect Shishi's divergent thinking. Children's thoughts are all wild and unconstrained. This is a good thing. Let them think freely. Murphy did not idle just now. She wrote the words Day 1, Day 2 on each cardboard. Then Shishi also drew a beautiful border around it. After watching Shishi draw for a while, Yang Yi wrote down the observation results from Shishi's recording in the empty space on the cardboard. Although Shishi was supposed to complete the observation report by herself, after all, she did not know many words and could not write many words. Therefore, Yang Yi did not make things difficult for the little girl. He wrote down the work that Shishi could not do for Shishi. As he wrote, Yang Yi smiled and said to Murphy, "It's a pity that this can't be an electronic version of the report. If it were possible, I wouldn't have to write it. I could just paste the recording on it." Murphy smiled and said, "If it's an electronic version of the report, then it's boring. Shishi will not have the chance to experience the joy of doing it herself. Besides, isn't the electronic version of the report more difficult? Do you think Shishi can operate your computer skillfully now? You don't say. I think the child is very talented in this area. Don't I know how to use the computer to play cartoons for her?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Later, I found out that she knows where the power button is. Then, she can point to me to open the purchased and downloaded cartoons for her. That's just the cartoons that she likes. Let me tell you, women are not interested in technical things. Let alone Shishi. Even if you ask me to learn, I can't learn." Murphy giggled. When Shishi finished drawing, Yang Yi was almost done writing Shishi's report. He pointed at the words under each cardboard and said to Shishi, "Here, draw a horizontal line here and write your name." "I know how to write my name, Yang Shi, but it's so difficult to write." The little girl was eager to try. She did not forget to chat with her parents. He watched as Shishi wrote her name stroke by stroke on the cardboard. Although the size of the two characters was uneven and the writing was crooked, Shishi still wrote down the two characters of her name completely. After writing a piece of paper, Cece turned her head to look at her father. While smiling, she eagerly waited for her father's evaluation. "Well written. Many adults don't know how to write the character Shishi, you're so good at drawing." Yang Yi praised. "Continue to work hard and finish it. We'll be done with half of the report." "Okay." The little girl nodded with satisfaction. Although such a complicated name needed to be written more than 10 times, she was more motivated to write her name after receiving her father's praise. In the future, when we give our second child a name, we can't give him a name as difficult to write as she. She doesn't understand now. In the future, when she finds out that she has to write this name for the rest of her life, I'm afraid she'll blame you. Yang-yi couldn't help but laugh softly to Murphy. Then what name do you want to give to second child? Murphy asked reproachfully. I think the name Shi sounds good. Chapter 530. Looking for recommendation tickets on Monday, looking for all kinds of tickets, QAQ. Shishi's name was given by Murphy. She had thought about it for several months and flipped through the dictionary before coming up with it. Now that Yang-yi was reprimanding her, Murphy was not happy. She pursed her lips and looked at Yang-yi as if she was annoyed. I still don't know if is a boy or a girl. How am I going to name him or her? Yang-yi had not thought about this problem carefully, so he could only say this. You can give him a boy's name, and then a girl's name. Isn't that enough? Murphy saw Yang-yi's embarrassment and deliberately teased him. Also, aren't you very witty? I think sometimes you are quite talented in giving names, as long as you are serious. Mo Fei was right. For example, the name of the dish Flying Together, and the name of their studio, What Fei Thinks, both looked very interesting, but these were all based on the situation that Yang-yi had a proper attitude towards them. Just like the name Yang-yi came up with for Dao Dao. When he was facing the 3 British shorthairs, he was thinking about something and didn't give them a proper name. This Dao Dao sounded so shabby. Murphy was now jokingly urging Yang-yi to think about it. Of course, she did not really want to decide on the child's name right now. However, Yang-yi still seriously thought about it. A few minutes later, he said hesitantly, My initial idea is that if it's a boy, I'll name him Yang-yi. If it's a girl, I'll name her Yang-yu. What's so special about these 2 names? Murphy did not comment and asked curiously. In Shishi's name, the word Shi is usually used to refer to the morning sun or the sun. And in Yang-ye's name, the word Yi is also used to refer to light. It refers to the bright and brilliant appearance, and it also has a beautiful meaning of overflowing talent, Yang-yi said. If it's a girl, the word Yu in Shishi's name, on the one hand, contains the word Yu in the moon and echoes the word sun in Shishi. Moreover, it has the meaning of precious pearl and divine pearl. I think it's more suitable for a girl's name. Yang-yi spoke frankly and showed his true ability. He even said proudly, These 2 names have a very good characteristic, it's easy to write. However, Murphy had been suppressing her laughter. When Yang-yi finished speaking, she laughed out loud and said, Didn't you realize that there's a big problem with the names Yu? Yang-yi looked at Murphy suspiciously and asked, What's the big problem? Let's use the same word to call Shishi's name. Then you can use the same word to call Yang-ye's name. Murphy pushed Yang-yi's hand and encouraged him with a smile. When Murphy mentioned the word Yu, Yang-yi understood. Yang-yi, Grandpa. These names were too convenient. Ahem. I didn't think this through. I'll think of a better name for a boy later. Yang-yi said awkwardly. Why don't you read it? Mo Fei said happily. Yang-yi could only change the topic. When he saw that Shishi had finished writing her name, he walked over and helped her tidy up the paper. He folded it according to the time and put it into the large hardcover book. At the same time, he said to Shishi, Shishi, I was just talking to your mom about your younger brother and sister. Dad wants to ask you, do you want a younger brother or younger sister? Younger brother or younger sister? The little girl raised her head and looked at her father in confusion. Yes, do you want mom to give birth to a younger brother or younger sister? If it's a younger brother, it'll be like Nan Jiaoyu, and a younger sister will be like Xian Air. Shishi said in confusion. But Nan Jiaoyu isn't a younger brother. He's older than me, he's an older brother. And Xian Air is also older than me. Dad is just making an analogy. Dad means that the younger brother is a boy, and the younger sister is a girl. Yang-yi said with a helpless smile. Shishi tilted her head and thought for a while. Then she frowned and said, But Papa, I want a younger brother and a younger sister. What should I do? Can I have both of them? Yang-yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This younger brother and sister were like dolls. Could they have both? I'm afraid not. Yang Yi shook his head and said, You can only have one. Murphy had been pregnant for more than 3 months. A few days ago, Yang Yi took her for a pregnancy test. The ultrasound examination had ruled out the possibility of twins. Ah! She cried out in disappointment. Murphy, who was laughing next to them, finally couldn't help but come over and interrupt the conversation between Yang Yi and Shi. She said, Well, don't embarrass Shi. Shi should say that no matter if it's a younger brother or a younger sister, you'll like it, right? The little girl nodded hard. After Murphy terminated her contract with Tianmei, she put the recording of a new song on the agenda. Now she could do some work. As long as she was not too tired, it was good for her physical and mental health. However, because Yang Yi was going to release military songs, Murphy was not willing to be left behind. She planned to sing military songs with Yang Yi. For this reason, Yang Yi temporarily gave up the unsuitable night at the military port, among the few military songs in his mind. Then, he wrote the remaining 2 songs for Murphy. In the recording studio of the newly listed Phoebe Studio, after reading the lyrics of the 2 songs that Yang Yi took out and listening to the demo that Yang Yi hummed, Murphy was not as excited as Ji Ningming, who was as excited as if he had found a treasure. Her expression was a bit strange. Yang Yi, how can you even write such a song? Mo Fei couldn't help but ask. She found it funny and strange at the same time. The first song was okay. Murphy liked it very much. The key was the second song. The second song was also good, but it was written by the rough Yang Yi. It was very strange. Ji Ningming was a loyal fan of Yang Yi. He held the score of the second song and excitedly defended Yang Yi. No, it's not strange. I think this is the strength of teacher Yang Yi. He has made innovations in the style of music. This time he incorporated the elements of older folk songs and the characteristics of minority music. In the instrumental music, he also added the arrow. Ji Ningming said a lot, but in fact, Murphy was not talking about the arrangement of the song, but the lyrics of the song. Yang Yi understood. He smiled awkwardly. After Ji Ningming finished, he explained to Murphy in private, The 2 people I wrote in the song are not referring to me. You know, before I met you, how could I have had time to date? The sourness in Murphy's heart subsided. She asked puzzledly, Then who are you describing? Old Luo. Don't look at him now. When I first came to Battle Wolf, he was still a young man. Yang Yi said with a smile. His wife was his childhood sweetheart. At that time, she wasn't his wife yet. The 2 of them had a very good relationship. Although Yang Yi said this was a connection that he reluctantly made up, he was not lying. The story of Luo Zongxing and his wife was indeed like that. Our army discipline is very strict, you know. Usually they are not allowed to call home. They have to keep it a secret. They can only call during the new year. Then, after old Luo called his parents, he called his girlfriend. The 2 of them are so tired of each other. It's even more tired than the song I wrote. Murphy covered her mouth and snickered. She said, Then if you write this song and old Luo hears it, will he come and beat you to death? Who cares? Let's sing it first. He can't beat me anyway. Yang Yi laughed. Chapter 531. In the blink of an eye, it was already June. After June 1st, Yang Yi suddenly remembered that June 1st Children's Day hadn't passed yet. It wasn't that he didn't care about the outside world, but because there was no June 1st Children's Day in this world, and there was no such thing as Children's Day. So he just sent Shi to kindergarten and picked her up. Nothing else happened. Yang Yi didn't feel sorry for all the children in the world. He just felt that he didn't give Shi a happy holiday that belonged to her, and he felt sorry for Shi. So this weekend, Yang Yi held a small party at home and invited Shi's friends and their parents to come over to play. He wanted to let Shi and her friends celebrate a late Children's Day together. In fact, after Yang Yi moved last month, Shi said that her friends wanted to come over to play, but Yang Yi was occupied with various things in those few weeks. One moment it was Yang Huani's exam, and the next moment he just came back from Yang Qing's wedding in his hometown. He was travel-worn and didn't have time to organize. Just right, He could kill two birds with one stone. On Saturday morning, Shishi dressed up beautifully. She wore a chiffon shirt and a pleated skirt. Murphy also put on Shishi's favorite butterfly headband and pink leather boots. She looked beautiful and cute, like a little lady, but also like a cute fairy in a fairy tale. The early summer sunshine sprinkled on her hair, as if the loose ends of her hair were emitting a golden light. Looking at the little girl running happily by the grass and running to the door to greet her friends, the bell-like laughter seemed to bring people back to their youth. The first one to arrive wasn't Lan Xian, who was the closest. Instead, it was Yang Luoqi, who was brought along by Yang Guo and Wu Yu. The two girls were together, and their angelic smiles melted everyone's hearts. The second to arrive was Nan Zhaoyu. Yang Yi was more surprised that Nan Yun also came today. He had been resting for a long time after his stroke. However, there was a small episode here. After Nan Yun fell ill, Guozi's father went to visit Nan Yun. Guozi inadvertently mentioned this to Yang Yi later. Last year, when Guozi helped Yang Yi entertain the children's fathers in the coffee shop, Guozi and Nan Yun talked and heard him play the piano. So he had an impression. Guozi's father, Guo Zhengyan, was the deputy mayor. Nan Yun was indeed a person's identity in the calligraphy world. Not mentioning this, Yang Yi smiled and greeted Nan Yun. "Old brother Nan, I haven't visited you for a long time. How have you recovered? Looking at you now, you're in a good state of mind." Nan Yun smiled and nodded to Yang Yi, then said slowly, "Walking and standing are basically not too big of a problem. The doctor also said that my recovery is good, but now my writing hand is still a little shaky, and my energy is not as good as before." It could be seen that the hair on Nan Yun's temples had turned a lot white. It seemed that the stroke still had a big impact on him. After all, he was also old. But Yang Yi still comforted him. "It's okay, take your time. This recuperation really needs some time." Nan Yun's wife and Wu Yu were entertained by Murphy. They were very interested in the villa, so Murphy took them around. Yang Yi accompanied Yang Yi and Nan Yun to chat in the living room. Shishi took her friends to play with steamed bun. In fact, Yang Luoqi wanted to play with the cats. She was afraid of steamed bun, and thought that dogs were fierce. But the three little British shorthairs were quite vengeful. When they saw the naughty children coming again, they had already slipped away. Steamed bun was quite conscientious. When Yang Luoqi came, he was still at Yang Yi's feet. He clawed at Yang Luoqi with his 4 feet on the ground. He bared his teeth and barked at Yang Luoqi, scaring the little girl. Then he tucked his tail and hid behind Yang Yi. Now, steamed bun knew that Yang Luoqi was a good friend and not a bad person. Not only did he not remember the bad things he had done before, he also shamelessly wagged his tail, and went between Shishi and Yang Luoqi, wanting to play with them. "Chi-Chi, steamed bun is very obedient. He won't bite people. Don't be afraid." Shishi put her small hand on steamed bun's head and patted it gently. The little yellow dog seemed to understand its master's intention and lay down. Shishi said, "Look at how obedient steamed bun is. Come and play with him." Yang Luoqi was actually not very afraid. She had told Shishi in kindergarten that she wanted to play with steamed bun. So, under Shishi's demonstration, she hesitantly squatted beside Shishi and reached out to touch steamed bun. Steamed bun raised his head and sniffed Yang Luoqi's hand. He even opened his mouth to lick it, but Yang Luoqi did not know. She was so scared that she quickly retracted her hand. "Hee Chi-Chi, don't be afraid. Steamed bun didn't want to bite you." Shishi looked at her little friend's scared expression, and couldn't help but laugh. Shishi reached out her little hand to steamed bun, who had an innocent look on his face. Steamed bun rubbed against Shishi in a fawning manner. Then he stuck out his little pink tongue, and licked his little master's soft little hand. So that's what he was like. Yang Luoqi understood. She liked steamed bun more than she was nervous. She walked back to steamed bun and played with him. "I also want to play with steamed bun," Nan Zhaoyu whispered as he squatted on the side and looked at Shishi and Yang Luoqi enviously. Ever since Nan Yun got sick, Nan Zhaoyu had become even more introverted. If it weren't for these little friends, he probably would have become an autistic child. Shishi looked at him with some confusion and said matter-of-factly, "Zhaoyu, you can also play with steamed bun." The little girl was very kind. She stood up and pulled Nan Zhaoyu over to squat in her previous position. Then she giggled and said, "This way, you can play with Steamed Bun." Steamed Bun saw that another person had come to play with him. He happily wagged his tail and got up from the ground. He raised his 2 front feet and put them on Nan Zhaoyu's legs. Young Luoqi was a little scared and a little surprised as she quietly called out. But Nan Zhaoyu was much calmer. He liked Steamed Bun even more than Young Luoqi. He revealed a surprised smile that he hadn't seen in a long time. He carefully patted Steamed Bun's head and muttered, "Steamed Bun, you want to play with me? I also want to play with you." Perhaps this kindness was contagious. Steamed Bun was very enthusiastic towards Nan Zhaoyu. After he put down his front feet, he jumped around Nan Zhaoyu and sniffed around. Nan Zhaoyu couldn't help but laugh. Xixi and Yang Luoqi also saw this scene and laughed. They happily joined in the siege of Nan Zhaoyu. After playing until he was a little out of breath, Nan Zhaoyu hugged Steamed Bun and said to Xixi dejectedly, "My mom won't let me raise a pet. I really want to raise a puppy that's as big as Steamed Bun." "Then you can raise a big dog. Xian Air's dog is very big. She said that she'll bring it over to play with us later." Xixi didn't hear him clearly. She was still trying to advise her friend. "Xixi, Zhaoyu said that his mom won't let him raise a pet. Even a big dog won't do," Young Luoqi said from the side. "I see." Xixi blinked her big eyes and said, "But Zhaoyu, you also have Little Fishy. Little Fishy is also a pet." Nan Zhaoyu was stunned. He also realized that his words didn't make sense. He scratched his head and didn't know what to say. Xixi was very happy to talk about her little goldfish. She said, "I'll take you to see my little goldfish. I'll take pictures of them." Young Luoqi was also interested. She happily said, "Okay." So, the few friends gathered in front of Xixi's fish tank. The little girl deftly opened the mechanism that her father had made and removed the barbed wire. Then she introduced her goldfish to her friends. "This is Little White, and this is Golden. I call it Little Gold." After listening to Xixi's introduction, Yang Luoqi knelt on the floor curiously and leaned over the low little table. Previously, Yang had it specially built for Xixi to observe and take pictures. She looked at the little goldfish through the glass tank. At this moment, Nan Zhaoyu finally understood his logic. He pulled Xixi and said, "Xixi, I want to say that I don't like little goldfish, but I like puppies. But my mom won't let me raise puppies." "You don't like little goldfish?" Xixi looked at Nan Zhaoyu with a little surprise. She was so surprised that her little mouth was round and her eyes were big. Moreover, the little girl had a little baby fat. She looked a little like the little goldfish sister when she puffed up her mouth. Little goldfish are so cute. How could you not like them? However, Nan Zhaoyu still nodded. Xixi didn't care too much. She still cared about her friends. She stood up and clapped her hands. "Okay. Then let's go play with the steamed buns." "Okay then." Young Luoqi was still a little reluctant, but she didn't have her own opinions. She liked to follow her friends. At this moment, Yang Yi called out from the living room. "Xixi, come over quickly. Xian Air and Chen Shiyin are here too." Xian Air and Chen Shiyin are here. Xixi exclaimed in surprise. Nan Zhaoyu and Yang Luoqi were happy. They ran out happily with Xixi. Another burst of laughter echoed through the house and flew all the way out. Chapter 532. Steamed Bun was a little puppy, a little yellow dog that loved to play. He liked to follow behind his little master and look for opportunities to run in front of his little master. He wagged his tail and raised his head, hoping that his little master would take him out for a walk. Its favorite thing was to run happily with its little master on the path by the lake. Then it would jump up and play games with the butterflies flying above the flowers. However, Steamed Bun still maintained the vigilance of a stray dog. Although she was only a 4-month-old female dog, she was still very loyal. When her owners were not at home, she would raise her vigilance and prick her ears to prevent strangers from intruding. If an unfamiliar car passed by, Steamed Bun, who was lying in front of the house, would stand up, look out the fence and growl a few times, although there was no sense of threat at all. On this day, Many of his little master's friends came to visit. There were adults, and there were also children. In the end, there was a chubby little girl with a big white dog. This adult Samoyed was well taken care of. Its fur was fluffy and covered with a layer of soft snow. It was really beautiful. And it was also very obedient. It lay there quietly with its tongue out, like a smiling angel. Its arrival was immediately welcomed by Shishi and the other children. They played with Lon Xian's big dog downstairs. Steamed Bun was also a newborn puppy that was not afraid of tigers. He was facing a big dog that was more than 10 times his size, but he was not afraid at all. He wagged his tail, ran in front of the Samoyed and sniffed around. The Samoyed had a gentle personality. Facing the lively Steamed Bun, it only turned its head left and right to look at him. At most, when Steamed Bun stepped on its tail to play, it would reach out a paw and gently pat Steamed Bun's head, as if it was very doting. However, the Samoyed did not play with Steamed Bun. After all, it was a big dog. It was surrounded by its little master and a group of children, so it did not move around like Steamed Bun. It just sat there obediently waiting for them to hug it. The big white dog did not play with Steamed Bun, but Steamed Bun was not angry. He was still cheerfully jumping around, full of energy. The children ate some of the pastries that Yang brought out, and then chattered away. No one knew what they were talking about, but they actually decided to go to Lon Xian's house to have a look. Shishi, Chen Shiyin, and the other girls were fighting to hold the Samoyed, but no one remembered Steamed Bun. Steamed Bun followed them to the gate of the villa, and found that the young master didn't want to take him out to play, so he stopped. Yang Yi was worried that these children would go out to play by themselves, especially with a large dog. Although it was a docile Samoyed, Yang Yi was still worried. He told the parents to let Murphy continue to accompany them, and then he went out with them. Steamed Bun, you have to stay and watch the house. You can't go out to play. Yang Yi saw Steamed Bun pacing back and forth in front of the yard. He didn't have time to take Steamed Bun out. He still had to take care of the 5 children, so he pointed at the house and said to Steamed Bun. Steamed Bun didn't understand his master's words, but the loyalty in his bones made him understand his master's meaning. He had to guard the villa. There were so many strangers today, so he couldn't let them steal the house. Steamed Bun turned his head and ran back to the door of the house. He sat down on his stomach vigilantly. He really did find some movement. There was a rustling sound coming from the fence in the yard. Steamed Bun turned his head to look. However, he didn't move because he could smell it. It was one of his own people. He saw Dodo nimbly crawl out from the fence and look at Steamed Bun with its big blue face. If it were any other day, Steamed Bun would definitely go up and play with Dodo. But today he couldn't. Steamed Bun could only watch as Dodo stretched, then nimbly climbed up the tree in the courtyard and squinted his eyes. Guarding the house was actually a bit boring. Steamed Bun laid at the door for a while before deciding to patrol the house. He could hear the adults chatting in the house. After circling the living room, Steamed Bun went to the side hall and saw the fish tank on the low table. What is this? If Steamed Bun could speak, he would definitely think this. The fish tank was usually locked with barbed wire, so he didn't have a chance to touch it. Steamed Bun often saw his little master looking at the things inside. Seeing that the fish tank wasn't guarded, his curiosity surged. The low table wasn't very tall, and Steamed Bun was gradually growing up. Even though his legs were still very short, he could still jump onto the table. Steamed Bun looked inside and saw a few small fish swimming around. Steamed Bun wasn't interested in the small fish. He felt that the rocks that the small fish were swimming around were a bit interesting. Cats were afraid of water, but dogs weren't. He curiously extended his paw into the water and poked at the small rockery. Suddenly, a piece of the dragon bone rock fell over, scaring the small goldfish inside. He didn't know if they were scared out of their wits. Steamed Bun was actually scared by this movement. He quickly retracted his paw and shrunk back. After observing for a while, he didn't find anything strange. It was a bit boring, but since he was here and Steamed Bun was thirsty, he went over and licked the water in the fish tank. The taste was strange, but Steamed Bun didn't dislike it. After drinking 2 mouthfuls, he curled his long tongue and accidentally pulled a small goldfish that was running in a panic into his mouth. The lively little goldfish gave Steamed Bun a fright. He sneezed and spat out the little goldfish in his mouth. Perhaps if he spat it out into the fish tank, the little goldfish could still be saved. However, Steamed Bun pulled his head back. The little goldfish was spat out onto the table and lay there on the verge of death. Not long after, it stopped moving. Steamed Bun tilted his head and observed the little goldfish. He even extended his small paw and poked at it. Perhaps he was still wondering how this thing got out of the fish tank. "Steamed Bun, what are you doing?" Murphy's voice was suddenly heard. She was going to the kitchen to get some fruit salad. When she passed by the side hall, she saw this scene. Steamed Bun also turned his head and looked at his mistress. He wagged his tail and ran to her feet and rubbed up to her. Goldfish. After Steamed Bun moved his butt away, Murphy saw the goldfish on the table. She cried out in alarm, "Steamed Bun, what did you do to it?" Steamed Bun could feel the anxiety in his mistress's voice. He wagged his tail and raised his head with an innocent expression. "You might not believe it, but this fish ran into my mouth by itself." If Steamed Bun could speak human language, he would definitely explain it to his mistress. Murphy ran over in a hurry. She carefully picked up the little goldfish and put it back into the fish tank. But it was too late. The poor little goldfish was already motionless. It floated on the surface of the water with its belly up. At this moment, Murphy realized that the fish tank was a mess. The fake mountain that she and Yang Yi had spent a long time on was a mess, not to mention the other fake aquatic plants that were all over the place. The other 3 little goldfish were fine. They were still alive, but seeing how they were avoiding Murphy in a panic, it seemed like they were quite frightened. You might not believe it, but the 4 of us goldfish brothers were swimming in our own territory when a terrifying head suddenly stretched out. It was like a heavenly dog, swallowing the sky and covering the sun. It swallowed one of our brothers with its tongue. Chapter 533. Steamed Bun, you little baddie. Murphy looked at Steamed Bun, who was staring at her pitifully. The little yellow dog also had a pitiful look on its face. This made Murphy unable to vent her anger. However, there was no point in blaming Steamed Bun now. Steamed Bun wasn't human, so it wouldn't understand anything she said. The problem was, what about the little goldfish? Although one died, there were still 3 spare tires. But this was the most beautiful little goldfish. She really liked it. If she knew, wouldn't she be heartbroken? Thinking about how sad the little girl would be and how she would cry, Murphy's heart was in a mess. She felt terrible and uncomfortable. "Murphy, we're preparing to go to Boss Land's house to take a look," Wu said to Murphy in the living room. "Do you want to come with us?" "I'll come too. I have something to ask Yang Yi about." Murphy forced a smile. She scooped out the dead little goldfish, put it in a plastic bag and brought it over. Of course, before she left, she didn't forget to cover the fish tank with a wire mesh. When they arrived at Lan Haokai's villa, she was playing with Lan Xian, Yang Luoqi, Chen Shiyun, and Nan Zhaoyu, and the other children, throwing little balls at Lan Xian's Samyed. "I want to come too." She heard the little girl's cheerful laughter, and then Murphy saw she run across the grass, chasing after the Samyed and taking the little plastic ball from its mouth. The Samyed was also very excited. It stood up like a human, sticking out its tongue and waving its 2 front paws as if to say, "Throw it to me. Throw it to me." The little girl threw the little plastic ball high up into the air. The Samyed flipped over, and its large body was still very agile. It pounced forward and bit the little ball in mid-air. Amazing! She and the other little girls jumped and jumped, all cheering excitedly for the Samyed. "It's my turn." Nan Zhaoyu also seemed to be in the mood. He happily ran to the big Samyed, stroking its soft hair while reaching out to ask for the ball. Other people's dogs. Murphy glanced at them and waved at Yang Yi, who was watching over the children, to come over. "You guys go and play. I'll take care of the children." Wu happened to see Murphy and Yang Yi's actions, so she volunteered to take over Yang Yi's duties. She walked towards the children with a smile. Wu Yu's maternal instincts were aroused when she brought out this group of innocent little fellows to play. She forgot to close the lid of the fish tank, and now the little goldfish is dead. What should we do? Murphy pulled Yang Yi aside, carefully opened the bag, and said sadly to Yang Yi, "We have to think of a solution. Otherwise, Shishi will be very sad." Murphy had such an experience. When she was a child, her family's dog fell sick and died. She was so sad that she couldn't eat for several days. Yang Yi looked at the dead goldfish in surprise. He frowned and asked, "Who did this? Little Gray? Little Guai? Or Shido?" "It's not a cat, it's Bowsy. When I went to the kitchen, I happened to see it by the fish tank. Its paws were still wet," Murphy said. Yang Yi nodded gently. "But if it was Little Gray who did this, Little Gold would have disappeared. Can we buy the same one for Shishi and bring it back?" Murphy suggested. "It shouldn't be a problem. It's just that, in such a rush, how would we have time to buy a new one for Shishi? She'll be bringing her friends home for some snacks later." Chun Shuryan and Xian Air were talking about this just now. As Yang Yi spoke, he pondered. Then his gaze fell on the huge aquarium tank in Lan Xian's living room. This aquarium tank was not just big. Lans Hao Kai had previously gotten someone to arrange it into an ecological aquarium tank. Hundreds of goldfish swam around inside, beautiful as an underwater world. Big Brother Lan, help! At night, the noisy villa finally quieted down, and the children returned home. Shishi, who had played the whole day, was still not satisfied. She had already finished eating, and was still circling around the dining table, excitedly telling her parents about the fun stories of her friends. Xiaoyu said he likes puppies and doesn't like little goldfish, but his mom didn't let him raise puppies, so he raised little goldfish. Chi-Chi didn't dare to play with Steamed Bun then. Then I told Chi-Chi that Steamed Bun was very obedient, so Chi-Chi played with Steamed Bun. As Yang Yi listened to his daughter's story, he subconsciously glanced at the obedient Steamed Bun. Although he and Murphy hadn't had the time to give Steamed Bun a lesson on ideology and politics, Steamed Bun seemed to have realized that he had gotten into trouble, and didn't dare to look at Yang Yi. He only saw his ears drooping, neck shrunk, head lowered, sitting pitifully to one side, completely unlike his usual crazy dog appearance. Yang Yi and Murphy listened to Shishi's story with a smile, but didn't give a positive response. They also didn't dare to mention the little goldfish to Shishi. They avoided the topic of fish, delaying it for as long as they could. But after taking a shower that night, before Shishi went to bed, she thought of her little goldfish. She hadn't done her homework to observe the little goldfish that day. So the little girl giggled, grabbed her camera, and wobbled down the stairs barefooted. "Wait, Mom. Mom will go with you." Murphy felt like she had done something wrong, so she followed behind Shishi in fear. In the side hall, Shishi skillfully opened the mechanism, opened the lid, and looked at the fish tank. After a while, the little girl made a puzzled sound. "Huh? What's wrong? Is something wrong?" Murphy was shocked and asked nervously. "Did Shishi see through it?" "Mom, this stone fell." Shishi pointed at the rockery in the fish tank, looked at her mother with confusion in her big eyes, and said. Murphy took a look. It was the rockery that the steamed stuffed bun had dropped. She and Yang Yi were so focused on getting the little goldfish back that they didn't remember to restore the rockery to its original state. But it didn't mean that there was a problem with the little goldfish. Murphy let out a sigh of relief, smiled, and said, "It's okay. Maybe Dad accidentally knocked it over when he was changing the water in the fish tank. It won't affect us." "Mom, you have to tell Dad not to hit the little goldfish. They will hurt," she said with concern. Her worried little face still looked very cute. "And then, when Dad comes out of the shower, I will tell him." Murphy quickly nodded and said. She started to take pictures of the little goldfish. Murphy watched from the side, but her heart was still hanging. She kept muttering to herself, "Did they pass? Did they pass?" Mom. She suddenly turned her little head and happily told Murphy about her discovery. Little goldfish has grown bigger. It is bigger than Little White and Big White. The little girl was so surprised that Murphy almost thought that she had been exposed and was shocked. However, it seemed that Shishi's reaction wasn't sadness but happiness. Murphy remembered the excuse that she had discussed with Yang Yi before, and she was secretly happy. Shishi doesn't suspect that little goldfish isn't the original little goldfish. She just said that it has grown bigger. She should be able to fool us. Little goldfish can grow too, Murphy said softly. Just like xiao guai and steamed stuffed bun, they are also growing up, right? You have taken care of little goldfish for so long, it must have grown up too. Really? The little girl was so happy that she danced with joy. She had been looking forward to the little goldfish growing up, but after observing it every day, it seemed that she couldn't see any changes. She didn't expect it to suddenly appear. She didn't doubt her words at all, which made Murphy feel a little guilty. She felt that she had deceived Shishi. After all, the little goldfish couldn't grow up so easily. However, sometimes white lies were necessary. Murphy looked at Shishi's happy and not sad expression, and the big stone in her heart was put down. Shishi, this is a very good discovery. You have to record it, Murphy said softly to Shishi. And the little girl nodded with a smile. She sat down at the small table, then took out her recording pen and skillfully pressed the record button. Then, she happily told her new discovery as if she was telling a story to a good friend. Chapter 534. Yang Yi had repeatedly hit a wall. They had even used some of Su Zhongwei's connections to pressure Yang Yi, but to no avail. The frequency of Global Pictures' contact with Sahara Publishing House had decreased a lot. It seemed like they had given up. It was also possible that they were deliberately ignoring Yang Yi. It was as if they were certain that no one could offer better terms than them. Indeed, other than Global Pictures, some domestic film and television companies were also eyeing the copyright of Prison Break. Although they did not make excessive demands, the bargaining chip to buy the film and television rights of Prison Break was nothing compared to the huge Global Pictures. Yang Yi would not destroy his own classic for money, but he would not easily sell it to a film and television company at a cheap price. Therefore, the copyright of Prison Break was still in his hands after a few months. Yang Yi did not care, but Lu Benji from Sahara Publishing House was anxious for Yang Yi. We can't be so passive. We have to take the initiative for our boss, Lu Benji said to his subordinates during a meeting. Boss's book is to be filmed overseas. Therefore, it's not realistic to wait for others to come to us. We can find a translator who is proficient in American culture to translate Prison Break. Then we can take the initiative to find someone from a foreign film and television company to watch it. This was a good idea. After the task was assigned, Sahara Publishing House started to look for a suitable translator. At the same time, Yang Yi's two storybooks, Shishi's Bedtime Stories 2 and Journey to the West, were also in the process of publishing. Sahara Publishing House had also bought advertising space in major children's literature magazines to promote Yang Yi's new book. These two books had just appeared in the market and showed good sales. Of course, it was the best sales in children's literature. If they were to be compared to the entire publication market, their competitiveness would be much weaker. After all, it was too niche. After nearly 2 weeks of waiting, the results of the art examination of Jiangqing Media University were finally released in early June. Just like the Capital Film Academy, the Jiangchuan Performing Arts School's ranking list also attracted the attention of the media. Every year, there would be some young stars who became famous at an early age applying. The most popular one was, of course, the Beijing Film Academy. However, that place was like a narrow wooden bridge. Even if one was a famous celebrity, he or she might not be able to get in. Jiang City Media University's Performing Arts Department had become the second choice for some celebrities. For example, Qinwen had chosen Jiangchuan last year. This year, there were also celebrities applying for Jiangchuan. According to the media, there was an idol celebrity named Liao Ichi among the candidates. He was quite good-looking and had acted in a few campus idol dramas before. This time, when he reached the age limit, his management company arranged for him to apply for Jiangchuan's acting major. No one knew if they wanted him to come here to make him look good, or if they really wanted him to hone his acting skills. However, the reporters did not notice an inconspicuous name on the list, Yang Huan. Although Yang Huan had been exposed by the reporters because she had appeared beside Yang Yi and was known to be Yang Yi's biological sister, no one had connected the name with Yang Yi's sister. Yes, Yang Huan had passed the Jiang City Media University's Performing Arts Department exam. When the news came out, the cafe at the corner of the street cheered again. Yang Yi was grinning from ear to ear. He was happy for Yang Huan. Among the candidates who had passed the exam, Yang Huan was ranked in the middle. She did not perform particularly well. After all, Yang Huan had only studied for half a year. She was not a genius and could not have gotten the first place with arrogance. However, overall, she was not too bad. She did not almost fail the exam. Yang Huan's martial arts foundation had probably helped her a lot. Of course, no matter what, Yang Huan had passed the most difficult stage. It was almost certain that she would get into Jiangchuan. What was left was to take the college entrance examination in half a month. As long as she did not mess up and pass the cultural test, which was not too high, Yang Huan would be able to become the junior of Dingxiang, Guizi, and Qinwen. You can't relax yet. After being happy, Yang Yi pulled a long face and played the role of a brother. He said to Yang Huan, "In the remaining half a month, continue to do the questions and strive to pass the college entrance examination perfectly." Got it. Yang Huan hugged Yang Yi's arm and said with a smile. Although she had not received the final acceptance letter, Yang Huan was still grateful to Yang Yi. She felt that if she did not have such a strict brother, her life would have gone on a different track. Perhaps she would not have the opportunity to sit in a university class. Instead, she would have walked into a big factory in a coastal city like many of her friends in her hometown, and become an ordinary member of the factory girls. Although Yang Huan was usually carefree, her character was similar to Yang Yi's. She did not know how to express her gratitude. However, she would work hard and repay Yang Yi's expectations with her results. The case of Qianli Chuanshu Group against Rong Huada finally came to trial. However, because the contract dispute had to be filed in the court where the contract was performed or where the defendant was located, the court that accepted the case was the local court of Xiangnan. It was normal that the case would not be filed in their own territory. Lawyer Huiyang was very confident in the beginning. After all, he had been paid to do things in the past 6 months. Through phone recordings, interviews with other artists, and even some illegal means, Huiyang had gathered a lot of evidence. There was evidence that Rong Huada had set up a contract trap to steal Qianli Chuanshu's original song. There was also evidence that Rong Huada had maliciously suppressed its artists and exploited their benefits. In order to avoid suspicion, Yang Yi did not appear in court. He did not even have too much contact with Qianli Chuanshu to prevent the reporters from catching him. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were also very grateful for Yang Yi's help. However, they were so poor that they could only live in the dormitory. They did not have the capital to repay Yang Yi. Until now, they only had the opportunity to help Yang Yi when he moved. Like Yang Yi, they could only continue to look forward to the future and secretly compose their own music. They hoped that in the future, they would have the opportunity to repay Yang Yi's kindness by singing. However, in the middle of June, the case that had been going on for more than a week finally came to a conclusion. However, Huiyang was shocked that the court's verdict had been reversed. Originally, there was a lot of evidence against Rong Huada Group. However, in the end, the court's verdict was not to terminate the contract between Qianli Chuanshu Group and Rong Huada Group. Instead, Rong Huada Group was to compensate Qianli Chuanshu with a loss of 100,000 yuan. Just compensation? Why did it turn out like this? Huiyang found out from the court that Rong Huada Group had a good attitude in admitting their mistake. They had taken the initiative to fire the relevant agents and legal manager. They had also apologized to Qianli Chuanshu in writing. Therefore, the court gave a lighter sentence. They apologized to Qianli Chuanshu? Qianli Chuanshu didn't know that the so-called written apology was actually an internal email sent to Qianli Chuanshu by their company. However, this email was not Qianli Chuanshu's own email. It was an official email that was controlled by the original agent. Moreover, the apology was not understood by the parties involved. Was this considered an apology? If they didn't terminate the contract, Qianli Chuanshu still had many years of contract left. Wouldn't he continue to be frozen by Rong Huada Group? What could the compensation of 100,000 renminbi be used as compensation? Huiyang's legal fees were more than that, okay? Faced with this ridiculous verdict, Hu Yang was furious. He immediately appealed to the provincial court and asked for a heavier sentence. However, a few days later, the provincial court rejected his appeal and upheld the original verdict. There's something fishy about this. Back in Jiangcheng, Hu Yang explained to Yang Yi in shame. Someone must have interfered with the trial. It's said that Rong Huada has an official background. Now it seems that this background is very deep. Then what should we do? Yang Yi looked at Lu Xiaoshu and the rest, who were originally hopeful of going to Xiangnan, but were now holding their heads in despair, and asked Hu Yang. No, I'll continue to help you guys fight this case for free. Hu Yang gritted his teeth and said. This mistake was simply smashing his reputation. I don't believe that they can do whatever they want in Jiangnan. What Hu Yang meant was that he would think of a way to get this case to the court in Jiangnan. In Jiangnan he still had some connections. He didn't believe that he couldn't compete with the power behind Rong Huada Group. After Hu Yang left, Lu Xiaoshu walked towards Yang Yi. He smiled bitterly and said to Yang Yi, Brother Yang, I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble. If there's really no other way, you don't have to worry too much about us. Why do you think that way? Don't give up on yourself. Yang Yi frowned and said, No, I've discussed it with Miao Chuan. Our current contract is very troublesome. If we continue to be in a deadlock and the reporters find out about your relationship, it will bring you and sister-in-law a lot of trouble. Why don't we just grit our teeth and endure for 6 to 7 years? When the contract is no longer valid, then we can consider making a comeback. Lu Xiaoshu said. But we won't give up on our music dreams. In the future, no matter what we do, whether it's working in the supermarket or making a living, we will continue to write songs and write our own music. When the contract is over, we'll bring our songs to you. We won't look for other management companies, we'll sing for you guys. Lu Xiaoshu wanted to repay Yang Yi in this way. Are you guys stupid? 6 to 7 years later, you guys will have passed your golden age. Furthermore, you guys lack the tempering of the stage. Do you guys think that you guys still have the ability to make a comeback? Yang Yi said reproachfully. Don't think too much about this matter. Just continue your lessons in school. As for the rest, Hu Yang and I will help you guys find an explanation. While Yang Yi was reprimanding Lu Xiaoshu and Lu Xiaoshu, Lin Muan was also sitting next to them with a thoughtful look. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan had a good relationship with him now. They often communicated with each other about music. Seeing that these two brothers were in trouble, did he have any way to help them? Chapter 535. Due to Chen Fengchen's perfectionist attitude, Soldier's Assault, which had been delayed for half a year, was finally completed. Yang Yi also attended the press conference for the completion of the filming as per his agreement with Chen Fengchen. However, today Murphy's behavior was a little strange. Especially when Yang Yi finished lunch and was about to leave, Murphy asked casually, Honey, do you know what date tomorrow is? Tomorrow? Tomorrow is June 18th. Yang Yi asked curiously. Why do you ask? Don't you normally ask what date today is? Murphy looked carefully at Yang Yi's expression and didn't find anything strange. She smiled and said, Oh, look at my slip of the tongue. I asked today. Today is the 17th. She pouted and said to Yang Yi coquettishly, They say pregnancy makes one stupid for 3 years. How long have I been pregnant? Why am I so stupid? Yang Yi couldn't help laughing, rubbed Mo-Fei's head, and said dotingly, How can I be stupid? Don't scare yourself. Be careful at home. You don't have to worry about anything else. The press conference won't be long. I'll cook dinner for you after I pick up Shishi. Murphy reached out her arms and hooked them around Yang Yi's neck. She said in a sweet voice, I want a kiss. Yang Yi kissed her gently on the lips and drove away under her satisfied gaze. Although Soldier's Assault was filmed in the military, Chen Fengchen obviously wouldn't hold a press conference there. Yang Yi arrived at a hotel in the coastal area. He arrived early. Under Chen Fengchen's lead, Yang Yi met with the main cast. Yang Yi was more familiar with Geng Sha, and he had a good impression of this simple and honest short young man who spoke with a thick accent. The two of them chatted for a while on the side. They were mainly talking about The Fugitive, which was going to be filmed in Jiangqing City next month. Through his conversation with Geng Sha, Yang Yi realized that Geng Sha was very dedicated. He studied the script seriously and could tell some of Wang Li's background. He even analyzed Wang Li's psychological activities and spoke clearly and logically. Of course, when Geng Sha talked to Yang Yi, he sounded nervous and embarrassed to look at Yang Yi. This was because he was still not confident in himself. When he faced Yang Yi, it was like facing a teacher who had come to give him an exam. Hearing Geng Sha stuttering his opinion, Yang Yi admired and patted Geng Sha's shoulder. He smiled and said, "What are you nervous about? I won't eat you. You said it well, you have to believe in your ability." Geng Sha scratched his head embarrassedly, not knowing what to say. Seeing this, Yang Yi didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he started chatting. "What are your plans after filming Soldier's Assault?" He realized that there was something wrong with his words, so he smiled and added, "What I mean is after you finish filming Soldier's Assault and The Fugitive." "I don't have any plans, I don't know." Geng Sha scratched his head and said in embarrassment, "Everyone said that I should join a management company, and many management companies have approached me. But Mr. Guo told me that I have to be careful when I choose and don't fall into other people's traps. So I don't know which one to join." Guo Guozi became Mr. Guo in front of Geng Sha. Yang Yi smiled but still said seriously, "He's right. I have 2 friends who signed with a management company called Ronghuadao in Xiangnan. In the end, that company stole their songs openly and secretly, and if they didn't give it to them, they hit them. Now they're fighting a contract lawsuit. It's very troublesome." Geng Sha became even more worried. He said, "Big brother Yang, this Ronghuada management company you're talking about seems to have contacted me, but I didn't agree." "It's right that you didn't agree." Yang Yi smiled. "Also, when you previously told me not to look for a male manager, I thought it was quite strange. I still don't understand why." Geng Sha said, "Last month, Big Brother Bin said that he wanted to be my manager. I didn't even dare to respond to him." "Big Brother Bin?" Yang Yi asked in confusion. "Who's Big Brother Bin?" Big Brother Bin is Song Dabin. Director Chen helped to contact the extras in the crew. He's from the same hometown as Assistant Ruan, and he used to introduce a lot of jobs to me, Geng Sha explained. Geng Sha didn't have the nerve to go into detail. His friendship with Big Brother Bin was built up through the barbecue in Ziran village. Actually, while Geng Sha was grateful to Big Brother Bin, he also kept a certain distance. He felt that Big Brother Bin was a bit unreliable. At that time, when he was still a small part in various crews, Big Brother Bin ordered him around and ignored him. Later, when Chen Fengchen took a liking to him, Big Brother Bin took credit and asked Geng Sha to treat him to a meal. Later on, when Geng Sha played the role of Su Sanduo, Big Brother Bin knew that Geng Sha was really going to be popular, so he started to curry favor with Geng Sha. The difference in attitude before and after was like heaven and earth. These were things that Yang Yi didn't know, but when he heard Brother De Bin's surname, he frowned, shook his head, and said, "Someone with the surname Song won't do. Geng Sha, let me tell you, I've calculated that you and the surname Song will clash, so don't look for someone with the surname Song. Also, it's better to look for a female manager. A female manager knows how to take care of people." Geng Sha was still a bit superstitious. He looked at Yang Yi and nodded in confusion. "It's best if you have relatives in this line of work, such as cousins, you can ask them to help you," Yang Yi said with a smile. Of course, the prerequisite for all of this is to find a good management company first. This was something that Yang Yi couldn't help him with. Although the Yang Yi brothers opened their own management company, they didn't hire people casually. Yang Yi wasn't a philanthropist and he wasn't related to Geng Sha by blood, so they weren't particularly close brothers. For him to say a few words to remind Geng Sha, it was already very kind of him. "Thank you, Big Brother Yang." Geng Sha nodded gratefully at Yang Yi. Just as Yang Yi was chatting with Geng Sha and waiting for the press conference to start, Murphy received a call from the security office at home. They are all my family's friends and relatives. These 2 cars, let them in." Not long after, Mo Xiaozhuan's car and Tyrant Wolf appeared in front of the villa. Murphy walked out and welcomed them in. Tyrant Wolf was driven by Guozi, and he was responsible for sending Ding Xiang over. Yang Huan originally wanted to come as well, but she was about to take the college entrance examination, so she couldn't be distracted. There were a total of 4 people who came to help today: Mo Xiaowan, Xiao Ai, Guizi, and Ding Xiang. That was enough. Mo Xiaowan said excitedly, "Sister, do you think brother-in-law will know that we made such a big fuss and were even seen by the security guards?" "Probably not, and even if he knows, he won't know what I'm going to do." Murphy smiled. When he left, I asked him what day it was tomorrow, but he didn't respond at all. "Then hurry up and do it." Mo Xiaowan rubbed her hands and said, "It's only 1 afternoon, so time is tight." Chapter 536. Soldiers' Assault received a lot of attention from the start of filming. On one hand, it was because Chen Fengchen was the director. Television dramas directed by the old man were almost always the blockbuster of the year. On the other hand, Chen Fengchen used a lot of rookies and old actors who were not famous or had never played the lead role before. This caused a lot of controversy. After filming started, Yang Yi and Murphy's relationship was exposed. Yang Yi, who had risen to fame as the original author of the series, brought even more fame to the series. At the press conference today, the reporters were surprised to see Yang Yi walk out behind Chen Fengchen and the others in a low-key manner. They raised their hands excitedly, wanting to ask Yang Yi questions. After all, this guy and his wife rarely went out and basically didn't see anyone. It had been more than a month since a reporter had been able to interview Yang Yi in person. However, after the press conference began, when a group of reporters excitedly asked him and Mo Fei some questions, Yang Yi took the initiative to say, "Today is the press conference of Soldiers' Assault, so please ask more questions about the show. Other than that, please forgive me for not being able to answer." He really did what he said, which made some of the gossipy reporters feel very disappointed. "You have a good plan, but I have a way around it." The reporters were also very smart. They thought of ways to skirt around the edges. For example, they would ask, "Yang Yi, Soldiers' Assault has been adapted into a television series. Do you have any role in this series?" Or even more circumstantial questions would be, "Did Murphy make a guest appearance in this series? If not, does she have any plans to make a comeback?" Hearing this series of roundabout questions, Yang Yi couldn't help but want to complain in his heart. Luckily, Chen Fengchen and the other old foxes were very good at controlling the situation. They joked around and pulled the reporters' attention back to the series itself. After the press conference, Yang Yi said goodbye to Chen Fengchen and declined their invitation to dinner. He then drove to pick up Shishi. Today, Shishi was also a little abnormal. Usually, when the little girl was on the way back, she would excitedly talk to her father about a lot of things. However, today, Shishi was unusually quiet. Yang Yi glanced at the girl sitting in the back through the rearview mirror. Her big black eyes were rolling around, and he didn't know what she was thinking. "Shishi, didn't you have anything to be happy about in kindergarten today?" Yang Yi asked tentatively. "There is." Shishi nodded and couldn't help but say, "Mr. Shin taught us to speak English. I can also say potato and tomato." "Haha, Papa, is potato the same as tomato?" The little girl couldn't help but smile until her eyes turned into crescents. "Potato is potato, tomato is tomato. These two are not the same. You have to learn to distinguish between them." Yang Yi smiled and said, "I know, Papa. I mean, they are similar," Shishi said with joy. Then Zhao Yu went to sleep again. He doesn't like to speak English. Yang Yi smiled. However, Shishi seemed to have thought of something. She quickly raised her small hand and covered her mouth, not saying anything. "What's wrong with you? Why don't you continue to tell your father about the fun things in kindergarten?" Yang Yi asked in confusion. However, the little girl covered her mouth and shook her head. "What's going on?" Fortunately, Shishi was never a child who could hold back her words. When she saw that her father didn't ask, she couldn't help but slightly loosen her small hand and cover her mouth less tightly. She whispered, Mom said I can't tell Papa." "What? Why can't you tell Papa?" Yang Yi's ears were very sharp. He asked in amusement. The little girl seemed to be coerced. She shook her head vigorously, and then put down her hand. She pouted and twisted her mouth and said, "Oh Papa, don't ask me. Is that okay? You can't tell Papa." "What's going on? Why are you being so mysterious?" Youngie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fortunately, they were about to arrive home. Youngie was going to go back and ask Murphy what was going on. The Humvee slowly drove in through the open gate. As usual, Steamed Bun followed beside it and excitedly welcomed the return of the big master and the little master. When Youngie got out of the car, he didn't see Murphy coming out to greet him. Usually, she would come out to greet him. Moreover, the curtains in the front living room were closed. What happened? Youngie wasn't a person who liked changes. Murphy's abnormality made him feel that something was wrong. He quickly patted Shishi, who was giggling with Steamed Bun, and pushed the door open with her into the house. But just as they entered the house, they heard a paw sound. It wasn't very loud. Although Youngie's muscles suddenly tensed, he reacted immediately and didn't make any moves to counterattack. This sound was too familiar. When he celebrated Murphy's birthday, he used this firecracker. As he expected, amidst Cece's exclamations of shock and surprise, the shredded confetti that filled the sky swirled down and landed on his and Cece's hair and shoulders. Steamed Bun, who came in with them, also had some scattered on his head. He shook his head and shook his body to shake off the shredded confetti. Youngie turned his head and saw Murphy, who was lying in ambush, smiling like a flower. Murphy threw down the firecrackers and opened her white arms. She smiled and said, "Hubby, happy birthday." At this time, Youngie also saw that the entire living room was decorated like a birthday party. There were all kinds of balloons and confetti, just like what he had arranged for them before. They were very attentive. "Right, it's my birthday," Youngie's brain suddenly turned. His predecessor didn't pay much attention to this, and he didn't pay much attention to it either, so he forgot that tomorrow was his lunar birthday. Youngie's lunar birthday was different from Murphy's. If it was tomorrow, Youngie also understood. No wonder Murphy asked him what the date was at noon this afternoon. Thank you for remembering my birthday." Youngie gently hugged Murphy's waist, which was already a little plump, and said somewhat emotionally. She was also unwilling to be left out. She bounced and said, Papa, I also know your birthday, Mom told me. Mom said that I can't tell Papa, because I want to give Papa a surprise." Youngie turned his head and looked at the smiling little girl. She pulled on her father's trousers and giggled, as if she also wanted to get her father's praise. Dad was wondering why she didn't want to talk to Dad when she came back from kindergarten today. It turned out that she wanted to celebrate Dad's birthday. "Thank you, Shishi. Dad is also very happy." Youngie hugged the little girl, kissed her tender little face, and then said with a smile. Shishi giggled and shrank her neck to hide in her father's arms, as if being kissed by her father was very shy. Of course, she was also too happy, so she was playing tricks. Youngie didn't have time to talk to Shishi. He stretched out his right hand, held Murphy's waist, and walked with her to the living room. At the same time, he asked curiously, "You arranged so many tricks by yourself? Wouldn't you be exhausted?" Murphy snuggled in Youngie's arms and said with a smile, "How could I do so much? Actually, I asked Xiaowan, Xiaoai, Xiaogua, and shouting to help." "What about them?" Youngie's ears moved, but he didn't feel any other movement. They went back. "Tomorrow, they will give you a gift at the coffee shop, because tomorrow is actually your real birthday. Today, I want to celebrate it with you alone, and accompany you through the early morning, our family together." Murphy sat on the sofa, holding Youngie's arm, looked at Youngie pitifully and said, "I'm a little selfish, will you be unhappy?" "How is that possible? I think it's not easy for you to come up with so many ideas for my birthday." Youngie smiled and rubbed Murphy's head. It had to be said that this woman was very good at decorating, and she did it better than Youngie. Even the three kittens, Xiao Guai, Xiao Gray, and Dodo, who stayed on the cat tree unwillingly, wore small singlets with the three characters, I, heart, and you on them. "Hee, you don't have to cook today, because it's already done. Although it's shouting who made it, I have an assistant," Murphy said. At this moment Shishi, who was playing on the side, raised her little head and shouted excitedly, "Mom, I want to eat cake." "Yes, and cake. Murphy nodded with a smile. Well, today I'll be the birthday boy who doesn't have to do anything, Yang-yi said happily. And I prepared a surprise for you tonight. Murphy bit her lower lip and said in Yang-yi's ear with her charming eyes. Chapter 537. There's a surprise tonight? When Yang-yi saw Murphy's intoxicated expression, he immediately guessed what the surprise was. Ever since Murphy got pregnant, he had been holding it in for a few months. Not counting the times he used his hands or other parts of his body, when he heard Murphy's whispers, the wildfire in Yang-yi's heart began to burn. Glancing at Shi, Yang-yi could only lower his voice and whisper into Murphy's sparkling ear. Look at what you're saying. I want to skip the previous programs and go straight to the theme. After flirting with Yang-yi, Murphy got up from his arms with a smile and said, That won't do. The theme is your birthday. Shi and I have prepared some small programs for you. In the evening after dinner, Yang-yi's birthday party began. Murphy said that she and Shi had prepared some small programs, mainly singing. After all, Murphy had only secretly told Shi about it yesterday. There was no special rehearsal, so they could only perform what they knew. It was impossible for them to come up with anything special. The first program was her and Shi singing, The King Asked Me to Patrol the Mountains. The main character was Shi. The little girl was now very skilled in singing this song. The king asked me to patrol the mountains. I'll go around the human world. I'll play my drums and strike my gong. Shi, who was wearing a cute little nightgown with a rabbit pattern, stood in front of her parents with a bright smile. She twisted and turned like a little elf dancing among the flowers. Of course, Shi also had times when she forgot the lyrics. At this time, Murphy sang a few lines with her. The sun blinked at me, the birds sang to me. Then Shi's big eyes lit up. She sang along with the lyrics in a clear voice. I'm a hard-working little fairy who's not clingy. Here, the little girl even made a move by herself. She cutely used 2 index fingers to point at her little face, bashfully, like a little fairy in an exaggerated play. Then, she felt a little embarrassed and threw herself between her father's legs, giggling. After Shi's performance, Murphy performed 2 small programs for Yang-yi. One was her playing the violin. Murphy's violin playing skills were not superb, but after all, she had been playing since elementary school. She played a world-famous violin song called Autumn Love Song. Yang-yi and Murphy looked at each other warmly amidst the gentle melody. If it weren't for Shi jumping around and giggling while pulling steamed bun, who was forced to stand up, the atmosphere would be as romantic as Christmas Eve. At that time, Yang-yi also played a violin song for Murphy. It was called Praise of Love. Murphy's second program was When You're Old, which Yang-yi sang when he proposed to Murphy. Murphy liked this song very much. Yang-yi told her that this song was actually better sung by a female singer. Murphy loved it so much that she couldn't put it down. She even studied the various singing styles of this song for a long time. Only one person still loves your devout soul, loves the wrinkles on your old face. Mo-Fei sang seriously. The trembling ending of the song was really full of emotions. Note 1. Yang-yi listened to the song while looking at Murphy's beautiful face. His heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. When the wind blows, your news, this is the song in my heart. Murphy also looked at Yang-yi affectionately. One hand gently stroked her full chest, and the other hand affectionately reached out to Yang-yi. Yang-yi smiled and took Murphy's hand. He was not satisfied with just listening to the song. He also followed behind Murphy's singing. He gently mixed the notes, adding a bit of human voice and rhythm to this a cappella singing. After the performance, Shi, who was dancing with the pitiful steamed bun, was still not satisfied. She ran into her father's arms, raised her little head and said, Mom sings well. Yes, Mom sings well. You also sing well. Our 2 lovely and elegant ladies sing well. Yang-yi lovingly rubbed Shi's little face and said with a smile. Hearing the praise, the little girl smiled with satisfaction. Next, it was time to open the gift and eat the cake. Shi's gift to her father was nothing new. It was still a picture that she drew with a colored pencil. However, in this simple picture, there was a rich plot. This powerful person is Papa. She pointed to a long man with a face and a body in the picture. Then she pointed to a big dog-shaped creature in front of her and said, "Then Papa defeated the big bad wolf with one punch and rescued Shishi and Mom." "Where are Shishi and Mom?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. In fact, he had already seen it. Shishi was very serious. She quickly pointed to a big tree in the picture, on which there were two small matchstick men. Shishi and Mom are on the tree. There is a big house on the tree, and then Shishi and Mom live in the big house. "This is a tree house. Where did you learn it?" Murphy curiously asked. "TV. I saw a big house built on a tree. Then you can live in it. It's very fun." The little girl thought that her parents didn't understand. She quickly stood up and described it to her parents with her small hands. They blew out the candles and ate the cake. It was worth mentioning that the little foodie, Steamed Bun, also wanted to get a share of the cake. "Steamed Bun, do you want to eat it too?" Cece was a kind and naive little girl. When she saw the steamed stuffed buns crawling around her feet and standing upright on her little skirt, she wanted to share some of the steamed stuffed buns. Although she also liked to eat cake, she was a little reluctant. "Steamed Bun can't eat cake." Yang Yi heard the movement. He said to Shishi, "There is cream in the cake. It can't digest it and will have diarrhea. And this is a chocolate cake. There is chocolate in it. Steamed Bun can't eat it. Eating it will be dangerous to its life." Shishi looked at her father in surprise. After listening, she quickly raised the small piece of cake in her hand and said with a pout, "Steamed Bun, you can't eat it. Papa said you can't eat it." That night, the whole villa was filled with laughter until the sticky little goblin was coaxed to sleep by Murphy. Murphy turned her head and pushed Yang Yi, who was smiling wickedly, and said, "Go take a bath. You're the only one who hasn't taken a bath yet. Let's not get up." Yang Yi pulled Murphy's hand and laughed. "No. Go." Murphy refused. Yang Yi could only turn around and go into the bathroom. When he came out with a towel wrapped around his waist, only Shishi was sleeping soundly on the bed in the big bedroom. Murphy was nowhere to be seen. Where did she go? Yang Yi was very curious. He walked to the bedside and saw a note left by Murphy. "Come to the second bedroom." The words were concise and comprehensive. There was even a lipstick mark on it. Yang Yi's blood rushed up. He was curious and excited. He came out of the master bedroom and walked to the second bedroom on the second floor. There seemed to be a wild wolf howling in his heart. A whoa! Of course, out of politeness, Yang Yi gently knocked on the door. "Come in. Why are you still knocking on the door?" Murphy's laughter came out. "Then I'm coming in." Yang Yi couldn't wait to open the door of the second bedroom. The moment he opened the door, Yang Yi seemed to have entered a dreamlike world. There was no light on, only the light red light on the bedside, like a veil shrouding the room. Not to mention the other decorations in the room. On the big bed, there were thousands of delicate and colorful paper cranes strung together like a mosquito net to form a curtain. It looked like an exquisite veil, waiting for the groom to reach out and lift it. It turned out that the paper cranes that Murphy folded in the past 2 months were all used here. Yang Yi was wondering why Murphy had been folding them, but he didn't see any results. There was one thing that Yang Yi didn't know. In fact, Mo Fei didn't ask anyone to help her with the layout of this room. It was all done by herself. Especially making this paper crane curtain. It took her a lot of time and energy. Through the curtain made of paper cranes, Yang Yi could see the beauty of his dreams. She was sitting sideways on the bed. Her white and slender arms and jade-like legs seemed to be only covered by a piece of red cloth. Her body was faintly discernible, but the most moving thing was the beauty's shyness. For some reason, Yang Yi suddenly thought of Lu Yang's Fighting 100 Flowers. Full of palace, slender waist, age of 10. Described as slim figure, shy of rain and shy of clouds. Note 2, but now was not the time to recite. This is actually your birthday present today. Through the curtain of paper cranes, Murphy said shyly in a low voice, "Didn't we not consummate our marriage on the day of our wedding? I thought." Towards the end, Murphy was too embarrassed to continue. "Can your body take it?" Yang Yi asked a little worriedly. And it can usually after 3 or 4 months. Last time, I specially asked the doctor, as long as it's not too intense. These words were not words of love, but they were better than words of love. This soft whisper was like a song that tugged at the heartstrings. Yang-yi couldn't hold it in. He pulled open the curtain and could finally see clearly. He saw Murphy's red face, as if she was intoxicated by wine. Similarly, he was intoxicated by her eyes and that bright red doo-doo. Actually, some of the desire was mutual. That night, there was no storm. After all, it was only the end of spring and the beginning of summer. The gentle and continuous drizzle was accompanied by the clear croaking of frogs, singing a pestering song until dawn. Chapter 538. A few days after Yang-yi's birthday, it was time for Shishi to hand in her big homework. Early in the morning, Yang-yi sent Shishi to kindergarten. After getting out of the car, Yang-yi carried the large notebook bag and prepared to bring Shishi inside. "Give it to me, Papa, give it to me." The little girl was particularly active. She excitedly jumped around her father and stretched out her small hand. This was her homework, which she worked hard for a month to complete. Naturally, she wanted to hold it herself and couldn't wait to show it to others. "It's a little heavy. You can't carry it, right?" Yang-yi hesitated for a moment. Because they were all large cards, this loose-leaf book was also of a certain scale. Not to mention the cards, even the rings in the middle of the book were heavy. "I can do it." Shishi raised her small head and confidently said to her father, "Papa, I'm super strong." Yang-yi felt funny in his heart, but he still carried the bag to Shishi. The little girl grabbed the bag and took it. It was a little difficult, but Shishi still picked it up. The bag was almost hanging to the ground. Shishi didn't want her work to be dirty, so she lifted the bag higher with her small arm. "Can you do it?" Yang-yi looked at his daughter with some worry. "I can do it." Shishi still answered confidently, even though she felt like she was holding back her strength to speak. Don't say, the little girl was like her father. She usually didn't show it, but there was a surprising strength in her bones. She actually carried the bag from the entrance of the kindergarten to the building, then went up the stairs and finally walked into the classroom of the middle class. Yang-yi, who was worried about Shishi, watched her walk into the classroom. He couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't expect his daughter to have such great endurance. However, Shishi had already gone in, so Yang-yi didn't follow her to praise her. Instead, he greeted Mr. Mu and turned to leave. He still had to rush to Jiangqing City's number 16 middle school, where Yang Huan was taking the college entrance exam. It was the second day of the exam, and there was another day tomorrow. Although Guizi helped to drive Yang Huan to the exam hall, Yang-yi was still a little worried. He wanted to go over to the exam hall. Like the other parents, he waited anxiously for Yang Huan to finish the exam. They still had to return to Springfield Kindergarten. Mr. Mu walked in from outside the classroom. The children who were chattering excitedly did not react. "Children, please return to your seats. The class is about to start." Teacher Mu smiled gently and clapped her hands to greet them. "Ha ha ha ha." The little guys still haven't come out of their excited state. One by one, they cheered even louder. In twos and threes, they ran back to their seats. The classroom was filled with cheers and laughter. It was so loud that it almost overturned the ceiling. Finally, Teacher Mu managed to calm the children down. She smiled and said, "I saw that all the children brought their homework to observe Xiaoyu. Am I right?" "Yes." All the children replied happily with their chests puffed out. Teacher Mu, my homework is over there." Chun Shiryan was still not satisfied. She said loudly to Teacher Mu, as if she was afraid that Teacher Mu wouldn't know. After she started, the other children also pointed to the cabinet in the classroom where their school bags were. They all talked to Teacher Mu about the whereabouts of their homework. "Mine is over there too. My homework is super big." Shishi followed the crowd and shouted enthusiastically. Okay. Everyone stop for a moment." Teacher Mu did not know whether to laugh or cry. She could only try to control the situation. She said, "I know, but I hope that everyone will listen to me quietly. Later, each child will bring your homework one by one and hand it in. Let everyone see the results of your observation of Xiaoyu. Then Teacher Mu will comment on it. Okay. Finally, there was some order in the classroom. Every child showed their own work. Because there was no restriction on how to do the report, the children handed in all kinds of homework. The simplest and most widely used one was like writing a diary. It was a thick diary that recorded the children's stories with Xiaoyu every day. There was an advanced version of this. The homework submitted by Yang Luoqi was probably done under the guidance of the university professor, Yang Gua. It was an A4 softcover book that was used for experimental reports. Mom wrote down the results of her observation. Obviously, these words were written by their parents. However, Teacher Mu read a few paragraphs to each child. This simple record was indeed written in the tone of the children. It was just that the parents had added some embellishment. Therefore, it could not be considered as their parents writing homework for them. There were also parents who directly made a photo album and took pictures of children feeding Xiaoyu. Other than the date written on the back of the photo, there were no other words. However, this observation report was also quite interesting. This child was praised by Teacher Mu. Then next, it's Yang Shi's homework. Teacher Mu looked at Shi with a smile. The little girl could not sit still any longer. She answered happily and stood up from her seat. She ran to the cabinet and struggled to bring her homework over to Teacher Mu. Wow, Yang Shi, your homework is so big. Although Teacher Mu had already seen it, he could not help but exclaim when he took it over. Hee hee. Shi twisted her little butt and stood beside Teacher Mu with a smile and embarrassment. Teacher Mu took out a loose-leaf notebook and flipped it open on her table. The more he looked at it, the more the smile in Teacher Mu's eyes became. Teacher Mu, you have to specially praise our Shi. Although the other children's observation homework is also very good, Shi's homework is the most interesting and creative that Teacher Mu has ever seen. Teacher Mu roughly looked at a few pages, then he raised his head and said with a smile. It had been a long time since Shi had experienced being praised by the teacher in public, and it was a serious praise. She looked at Teacher Mu happily. Her small chest was high and her small hands were intertwined behind her back. It could be seen how happy she was. Everyone look. In this homework, there are photos of the little goldfish and daily observation records. Teacher Mu raised Shi's homework and showed it to the children. This place is also full of patterns and patterns. Wow, it's so beautiful. The children below the stage were all attracted by Shi's homework and cried out enviously. I know. Shi can take photos. She took a lot of photos. She even took photos with me. Lan Xian proudly introduced Shi to Teacher Mu and the other children with her loud voice. She was proud of Shi, but she was so happy that it was as if she was the one being praised. Really? Teacher Mu had actually seen Shi's division of labor in Yang Yi's brief introduction of the process of forming the report on the first page of the loose-leaf notebook. However, she still asked with a smile. Shi, you actually know how to take photos? You're so good. My papa taught me. The little girl was looked at with admiration by so many little friends. She felt happy and a little embarrassed. She waved her two little hands in front of her and explained. Then Shi, tell everyone that this big homework was done by you, right? Teacher Mu said with a smile. I took photos, and then Papa asked me to paste them. Then I drew. Teacher Mu, I spoke with a recording pen but I don't know how to write. The little girl chattered a lot. So, it was your father who helped you write these observation reports, right? But I saw that the signature here seems to be written by you. Teacher Mu said with a smile. Ehe, I can write my name. Shi said to Teacher Mu with a smile. Very good. Teacher Mu likes it very much. I hope that other children can learn from Shi in the future, and work hard to complete your homework in more interesting ways. The more you can stimulate your thinking and create innovative children, the more applause you will receive, and the higher marks you will get from Teacher Mu. Teacher Mu asked Shi to sit back down. She still wanted to continue. Unsurprisingly, Shi's big homework, which had pictures and text, was done the best among all the children. She also had the highest participation rate. After grading all the homework, Teacher Mu gave Shi the last little red flower of the semester. Shi finally experienced the joy of success brought about by participation, hard work, and perseverance. The sense of accomplishment that was exchanged for a month of hard work was incomparably precious. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.